hopefully, sound actually works. Hey, imagine that. Imagine that. Okay. Let's go ahead. Fuck's sake, you guys. So annoyed. Like, literally so annoyed right now. Okay. Got our admin bot. Fuck. Okay. Why? Are we not live? No, we're live. What the fuck? Okay. Hold up. No, what the hell? Okay, guys, I don't know what the problem is. Oh, what the fuck? Okay, there we go. We got it. What on earth? No, we don't got it. What the hell? Kitty, please, up or down here. I'm getting a little annoyed. What the fuck? Get. You're pestering. I love you, you're pestering. She's pestering you guys. Help. Okay. What the fuck? I am being told I'm offline on Kick. Okay. Bless you. Bless you. Fuck off, please. Okay, guys, I'm not sure what the problem is right now, but Kitty, please, I love you very much. I need you to not. Thank you. Get, bro. Fuck off, please. Please. Alright, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm having problems with Kick. Please go away, Anna. I love you. Go away. I'm trying to make sure we're good to go on Kick, and then I'll get started. Get out of here, you little shit. Anna, I love you. Can you please not, baby? Like, get. Can you? Why can't you sit next to me? That's just not enough for you. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and assume we're good to go. All right. Let's get started. You need to either sit here or get off my lap. I'm so serious right now. So, what the fuck? Okay, hold on. We've got to pull everything back up. Everything just fucking bricked a while ago, so. Okay, god damn it. Well, at least our camera is working. At least is our audio? Yeah, our audio is working. Oh, for Christ's sakes, y'all. Fuck me. Okay, we're gonna pull up. Okay, perfect. We got that there. And we've got the other one over here somewhere. We don't know where. Nobody knows. No, we've got our Discord notes, basically. Our whiteboard. Hold up. We gotta pull up our whiteboard. Okay, pulling up our whiteboard. Pulling up our whiteboard. Okay. Fuck, man. Have you ever just had one of those days where literally everything is a huge fucking pain in the ass? That's my day today. And part of it is just, why are my neighbors fucking bazillion children playing in my yard. Personally, I would have gotten whooped for that. I don't know about y'all. I don't know about y'all. I would have gotten whooped. I'm not even. I would have got my ass fucking whooped. Okay. I'm not saying that people should whip children. Just to be clear, I'm not. Not saying that. But it would not have been appreciated. We will put it delicately. Okay. All right. Now I'm trying to pull this up. Give me like 2 seconds here. What the absolute shit. Okay. So we've got this up. Just looking for the option to show it on stream. Okay. Mother of pearl. Hi, kitty. Thank you for sitting there, honey. Good girl. Okay. It's just not wanting to. It's only wanting to show regular degular Discord. That's fun and fresh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Where's whiteboard? What the heck? Huh. Okay. Where's whiteboard? Y'all. What in the world? Okay. Let's grab this. Whiteboard! There it is, finally. Thank you. Ah. So we'll just scroll back from that. We'll go ahead and scroll back from that a little bit. And make sure everything's good to go. Nobody's getting kicked out. Nothing like that. Okay. And hi, honey. Can you please sit or lay there, please? Okay. Make sure our bots are online. I know, kitty. You're a good girl. Thank you. You're okay. You're a good girl. Good girl. I love you. Good kitty. Is this what we're doing right now? I don't know. Okay. Whoa. That's loud. Trying to monitor the sound levels here. Let me just see. Are we getting feedback, like an echo? Like a little bit? A little bit? Stop. Fuck. Thank you, Anna. I love you. Go away. No, you go away. No, you can go away. You don't need to go back up there. Okay. I love you, baby. You just relax. Okay. So, let me really quick take a look though at my audio. Test. Okay. I'm just a little irritated with this. Test. Is that better? Is that? Testing. Let me test this on my admin account. Hold on. Testing. What the fuck? It's like adding echo? Testing. What the fuck, you guys? Testing. Test. What? Testing. What the hell? How is that making it echoey? What the actual shit? Like, my D-reverb is actually making me echo. This thing is driving me absolutely bonkers. What the fuck? Hold on a sec. This is so fucking irritating. Testing, testing, testing. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. It still sounds echoey to me. Testing. Test, test, test. Testing. Testing. Is that a little better, or am I just, is this all cope? It might be cope. Okay. I am going to make a quick adjustment here, which is I'm going to move sound over to the left a little bit. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. Something is wrong with my audio here. Okay, perfect. I can hear. Let me know if you guys are able to hear okay. I do notice that bit of echo, but I'm not sure what the problem is, frankly. I'm tapped out right now, and we're just going to continue. I don't think it's that distracting. Let me know if it is. We're just going to go ahead and just continue. We're just going to go ahead and just continue on. So the Discord link is in the drop down. That's where our whiteboard notes are. And oh, hey, howdy. Hi, welcome. Welcome. Okay, so throwing it in the multi right now so that y'all can see. I'll just put hi, baby. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, my cat is so upset with me right now. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, and we're gonna be finishing up reading through this god awful fucking travesty. I mean, this amazing document that we shall know and love. And I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, I think. Okay. Not all policy changes require formal rulemaking, however. Oh, goody. As internal guidance documents are generally exempt under the Administrative Procedure Act, APA. In this sub-regulatory space, USCIS policy memos and operational guidance should reduce the validity of employment and authorization documents and the end of COVID end the COVID flexibilities, including the reliance on biometrics reuse. What do we mean by biometrics reuse? Like, I think we're going to have to revisit that later. USCIS should also enforce existing regulations by rejecting incomplete applications and petitions, ensuring both that they are completed before accepted for filing and that FDNS signs off on all approved applications and petitions before approval notices are sent to the alien or petitioner. Other effects should be focused on adjudication standards returning to nearly 100%, interview requirements for all appropriate cases. The incoming administration, i.e. the current Trump administration, pardon me, should spearhead an immigration legislative agenda focused on creating a merit-based immigration system that rewards high-skilled aliens. Well, we already have that, but okay, instead of the current system that favors extended family-based and luck of the draw immigration, to that end, the diversity visa lottery should be repealed. Chain migration should be ended while focused on the nuclear family, and the existing employment visa program should be replaced with a system to award visas only to the quote-unquote best and brightest. Great. Well, that's already happening, but let's make it more racist. Am I right? Internal efforts to limit employment authorization should be matched by congressional action to narrow statutory eligibility to work in the United States and mitigate unfair employment competition for U.S. citizens. The oft-abused H-1B program should be transformed into an elite program through which employers are vying to bring in only the top foreign workers at the highest wages so as not to depress American opportunities. Additionally, Congress should improve the integrity of the temporary work visa programs. Gwen, if you're going to pester, you can go away. I love you. Sorry. I love you. You go away if you're going to pester. Repeal temporary protected status designations. What she's trying to do is climb up on my shoulder. Permanently authorize and make mandatory e-verify. Again, that's not very accessible, but I doubt they're going for accessibility here. Excuse me, more than like 1939 Germany. And parole abuse by legislating specific parole standards. USCIS should make it clear that where no court jurisdiction exists, it will not honor court decisions that seek to undermine regulatory and sub-regulatory efforts. Finally, USCIS still requires access to all relevant national security and law enforcement databases in the same vein as any other agency in the intelligence space. This is a key concept that should be addressed as USCIS is returned to functioning primarily as vetting agency. A vetting agency. Budget. USCIS is primarily fee-funded, operating on revenue derived by those who are seeking immigration benefits, work permits, and naturalization. The total agency budget requested for fiscal year 2023, including both fees and a small appropriation, is slightly less than $6 billion. The bulk of funds are derived from application fees through the Immigration Examinations Fee Account. As a general principle, adjudication of applications and petitions should be paid by applicants, not American taxpayers. It is critical that any changes in the budget, even in the wake of a realigned agency combined with ICE and CBP, should retain a fee-funded model. Given the Obama and Biden administrations' lack of will, fees should be increased agency-wide to keep in step with inflation and the true cost of the adjudications. The incoming administration should immediately submit a fee rule, drastically limit the availability for fee waivers, and should implement a fee for asylum applicants. Additionally, Congress should allow for a 10% cross-border increase in all fees for all fee rules to account for the fact that new fee rules always lag behind budget requirements. USCIS should strive to increase opportunities for premium processing, a benefit by which applicants can expedite their processing times. While this places time burdens on adjudicators, it provides an opportunity for a significant influx of money into the agency, which is not currently available. While simply raising fees to the necessary levels to make the agency run efficiently would be preferable without the need for expanded premium processing, this short-term measure should be utilized, particularly if long-term fee rules are unsuccessful, at least until USCIS is caught up. Pardon me, I've got cat fur. It's a problem. Jesus fucking Christ. At least until USCIS is caught up on all case backlogs, as if that's going to happen. All applicants rejected for any benefit or status adjudication should be required to leave the U.S. immediately. Ordinary process can resume once all case backlogs have been adjudicated. Finally, USCIS should pause the intake of applications in a benefit category when backlogs in that category become excessive. Once USCIS adjudicators can decrease that caseload to a manageable number, application intake should resume. Personnel. USCIS should be classified as a national security sensitive agency, pardon me, and all of its employees should be classified as holding national security sensitive positions. Rather, leaks must be investigated and punished as they would be. Yeah, sure. No whistleblowers, guys. This is the U.S. government. As they would be in a national security agency. And the union should be decertified. Jesus. Any, I'm sorry, any employees who cannot accept that change and cannot conform their behavior to the standards required by such an agency should be separated. USCIS's DC personnel presence should be skeletal, and agency employees with operational or security roles should be rotated out to offices throughout the United States. These USCIS employees should live and work in the communities that are most affected by their daily duties and decisions. Good Lord. Necessary border and immigration statutory, regulatory, and administrative changes. Wow, make it more of a mouthful, Ken. The current border security crisis was made possible by glaring loopholes in our immigration system. The result was a preventable and predictable historic increase in illegal and inadmissible encounters along our southern border. This pulled limited resources from the front lines of our nation's borders and away from their national security mission, releasing a vast and complex set of threats into our country. To regain our sovereignty, integrity, and security, Congress must pass meaningful legislation to close the current loopholes and prevent future administrations from exploiting them for political gain or personal ideology. Okay, as if that's not what's happening here. Legislative proposals, Title 42 Authority and Title 8. Create an authority akin to the Title 42 Public Health Authority that has been used during the COVID-19 pandemic to expel illegal aliens across the border immediately when certain non-health conditions are met, such as loss of operational control of the border. What? Lord have mercy. This is insano. Like, okay, let's back this up and go into our notes. Anna, do not, please. I love you very much. Yeah, there you go. Good girl, honey. Thank you. Okay, this is wild. So let's, for fuck's sake, let's scoot down to the bottom of the page here and just throw in what we can before we have to move on to another whiteboard. Okay. Oy. That's fucking wild. Okay, there we go. That's fun and fresh. Fuck. Excuse me. So, throw that up in the notes here. Don't know why it's not letting me scroll down, but fun. Yay. It's indicative of the type of day I've been having. Okay. I think we'd better copy and paste in these so-called legislative proposals too. Okay. Now let's get back to this. Pardon me, I don't have a way to mute with my audio hijack going. So, mandatory appropriation for border wall system infrastructure. The monies appropriated would be used to fund the construction of additional border wall systems, technology, and personnel in strategic locations in accordance with the Border Security Improvement Plan, BSIP. Appropriation for port of entry infrastructure. Border security is not addressed solely by systems in between the ports of entry. POEs require technology and physical upgrades as well as an influx of personnel to meet capacity demands and act as the literal gatekeepers for the country. This is the first line of defense against drug and human smuggling operations. Silly me, I thought the first line of defense against drug and human smuggling operations was to stop fighting the war on drugs, the failed war on drugs, which drugs won. But, What do I know? I'm not Ken the Cooch Cuccinelli. Oh God, I can't even begin to imagine what we're going to read in this section. Pardon me. Unaccompanied minors. Congress should repeal Section 235 of the William Wilberforce Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008, TVPRA, which provides numerous immigration benefits to unaccompanied alien children and only encourages more parents to send their children across the border illegally into unaccompanied. Oh my God, come on. These children too often become trafficking victims, which means that the TVPRA has failed. Sure. If an alternative to repealing Section 235 of the TVPRA is necessary, the section should be amended so that all unaccompanied children, regardless of nationality, may be returned to their home countries in a safe and efficient manner. Currently, the TVPRA allows only children from contiguous countries, Canada and Mexico, to be returned, while every other unaccompanied minor must be placed into a lengthy process that usually results in the minor's landing in the custody of an illegal alien family member. Jesus Christ, this is so gross and racist. Number 3, Congress must end Flores settlement agreement by explicitly setting nationwide terms and standards for family and unaccompanied detention and housing. Such standards should focus on meeting human needs and should allow for large-scale use of temporary facilities, for example, tents. Number 4, Congress should amend the Homeland Security Act and portions of the TVPRA to move the detention of alien children expressly from the Department of Health and Human Services to DHS. Asylum reform. The standard for a credible fear of persecution should be raised and aligned to the standard for asylum. It should also account for specifically for credibility determinations that are a key element of the asylum claim. Number 2, codify former asylum bars. Oh, for fuck's sake. Hi, Kitty. And third country transit rules. Number 3, Congress should eliminate the particular social group protected ground as vague and overbroad, or in the alternative, provide a clear definition with parameters that, at a minimum, codify the holding in matter of A, B, that gang violence and domestic violence are not grounds for asylum. Jesus Christ. Parole reform. Congress should end the widespread abuse of parole in contravention of statute and return it to its origins as an extraordinary remedy for very limited purposes. NGOs in processing. Congress should halt funds given to non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to process and transport illegal aliens into and throughout the United States. Such funds and infrastructure, including the DHS Joint Processing Centers, should be redirected to secure the border, detain aliens, and provide space for immigration court proceedings. You guys stay there, honey. You cannot climb all over mommy right now, but I do love you. Other pathways for border crossers. While Congress should use its oversight authority to ensure that expedited removal is used to the fullest extent and followed to the letter of the law, other paths for border crossers should be included in a legislative package. Migrant protection protocols, update the statutory language providing the basis for the Remain in Mexico program as needed to withstand judiciary scrutiny and executive inaction. Asylum cooperative agreements, while the agreements themselves must be negotiated. I've got cat fur in my eye. Congress should mandate that the executive branch work faithfully to negotiate and execute ACAs and set parameters to ensure that an unwilling executive cannot renege on an existing agreement or abandon the effort. Other expedited pathways. Congress should explicitly permit programs akin to the Prompt Asylum Claim Review, PACR, and Humanitarian Asylum Review Process, HARP programs. Employment authorization. Congress should reassert control of employment authorization, which is subject to rampant regulatory abuse, and limit it to certain categories of legal immigrants and non-immigrants. Congress should also permanently authorize E-Verify and make it mandatory. State and local law enforcement. Congress should unequivocally authorize state and local law enforcement to participate in immigration and border security actions in compliance with Arizona v. United States. Congress should require compliance with immigration detainers to the maximum extent consistent with the 10th Amendment and set, if I could talk right, financial disincentives for jurisdictions that implement either official or unofficial sanctuary policies. Jeez. Prosecutorial discretion. Congress should restrict the authority for prosecutorial discretion to eliminate it as a catch-all excuse for limiting immigration enforcement. Mandatory detention. Congress should eliminate ambiguous discretionary language in Title VIII that aliens may, quote unquote, be detained, and clarify that aliens shall be detained. This language, which contrasts with other shall detain language in statute, creates unhelpful ambiguity and allows the executive branch to ignore the will of Congress. Okay. Regulations. Withdraw Biden administration regulations and reissue new regulations in the following areas: credible fear, asylum jurisdiction for border crossers, public charge, T visa and U visa reform, unless and until T and U visas are repealed. Each program needs to be reformed to ensure that only legitimate victims of trafficking and crimes who are actively providing significant material assistance to law enforcement are eligible for spots in the queue. What? Okay, you need to get down. I love you, baby. Repeal TPS designations. I'm so sorry. For fuck's sake. So basically only immigrants who are willing to inform on other people are welcome for T and U visas? Lovely. Please, I love you, kitty. Again, repeal TPS designations, H-1B reform, transform the program into an elite mechanism exclusively to bring in, quote-unquote, the best and brightest at the highest wages, while simultaneously ensuring that U.S. workers are not being disadvantaged by the program. H-1B is a means only to supplement the U.S. economy, to keep companies competitive, not to depress U.S. labor markets artificially in certain industries. Employment authorization. Along with the legislative proposal, take regulatory action to limit the classes of aliens eligible for work authorization. Executive orders, pathways for border crossers. Direct the Department of State and the Department of Homeland Security to reinstate asylum cooperative agreements with Northern Triangle countries immediately. Recommends negotiations with Mexico to negotiations with Mexico to fully implement the Remain in Mexico protocols. Reinstate to the extent possible expedited pathways with full credible fear immigration court process, PACR and HARP. Prohibit the use of notices to report, the use of any funds for travel into the interior of the United States and government flights or transportation for aliens. Mandate that ICE use all detention space in full compliance with Section 235 of the INA, issue weekly reports on detention capacity, and provide authority for low-level temporary capacity, for example, tents, once permanent space is full. Eliminate the use of ATD for border crossers except in rare cases and only with the explicit authority of the Secretary. Prohibit the use of parole except in matters that are certified by the Secretary of Homeland Security as requiring action for humanitarian or significant public benefit reasons. And prohibit the use of parole in any categorical circumstance. Enforcement. Restrict prosecutorial discretion to eliminate it as a quote-unquote catch-all excuse for limiting immigration enforcement. Number 2, mandate the use of E-Verify for anyone doing business with the government. I don't know why he's restating this, but okay. Number 3, designate USCIS as intelligence community adjacent, ensuring that it has access to national security and law enforcement databases. Oh, goody. Let's count the ways that could go wrong. Number 4, rescind all memoranda limiting enforcement of immigration laws, including those identifying sensitive zones. Number 5, end ICE's widespread use of termination and administrative closure of cases in immigration court. Averting or curtailing a mass migration event. Provide that whenever the Secretary of Homeland Security determines that an actual or anticipated mass migration of aliens en route to or arriving off the coast of the U.S. presents urgent circumstances requiring an immediate federal response, the Secretary may make, subject to the approval of the President, rules and regulations prohibiting in whole or part the introduction of persons from such countries or places as he or she shall designate in order to avert or curtail such mass migration, and for such a period of time as deemed necessary, including through the expulsion of such aliens. Such rule and regulation making shall not be subject to the requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act. You need to go somewhere else, Anna. You're pestering Mummy. I love you. You do something else for a while, huh? You little shit. Or lay down here. Just lay down here. What's the matter? You okay? Or just lay down here, huh? Just lay down right here. You don't need to climb on Mom. You okay? You just lay down right here. You just don't need to climb all over Mommy. That's all. You're okay. Mommy's here. She's got you. You're safe. You're okay, honey. You're okay. Sorry, she's a little upset. You're okay, my love. Anna, I adore you. You're a good girl. Number 2, provide that notwithstanding any other provision of law, when the Secretary makes such a determination and then promulgates, subject to the approval of the President, such rules and regulations, the Secretary shall have the authority to waive all legal requirements of Title VIII that the Secretary in his or her sole discretion determines are necessary to avert or curtail the mass migration. Sub-regulatory matters. USCIS priorities / structural changes. Ensure that focus is returned to vetting base eligibility of applicants and fraud detection. Realign, number 2, realign the Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, FDNS, to ensure agency-wide consistency. Why don't you lay down, kitty? On implementation of fraud detection and vetting policies. Number 3, review and repeal any internal agency memo that is inconsistent with the priorities described in this chapter. I'm sorry, this makes me sad. This is so fucking sad. You okay? You can lay here. Come lay right here by Mom. Come here. Come on. Come here. There you go. You're okay, baby. Just lay right here. You're okay. Are you scared? Okay. Whoops. You okay? Alright. Kitty's got to get situated here. One sec. You okay, Chooch? You okay, little Choochie? Anna Marie. Okay, move that over a little bit. Hi, baby. You're okay. Why don't you just curl up? You don't want to? She doesn't quite get how this chair works. She's not sure about it. Yeah, good girl. There's a good kitty. Good girl. Good girl, Anna. You're okay. You can lay down. You can relax. You're a good girl. Poor baby. Poor little Chooch. My good girl. Good kitty. You're okay. Just relax. You're okay. You're safe. You're safe. We're going to calm the kitty down for a minute. Calming that kitty cat down. She's okay. Mommy's here and Anna is safe. Baby Chooch. You're okay, honey. You're okay, lovey. You can lay down wherever you want here. I know. You just lay down wherever you want. Yeah? No? She just is not sure about this chair, you guys. She's like, I don't know, Mom. I'm not sure about this one. You're okay, my love. Good girl. You're okay, my darling. Sorry, so cute. She's just like, whoa, I don't like it. It moves. Honey, you've sat in other moving chairs with Mommy. You're safe, my darling favorite. You're safe, my favorite little baby ever. This precious kitty. Like, come on. Is she not absolutely adorable? Anna Marie. Anna Marie, are you okay? Yeah? Okay. Mommy loves you. You're safe. Mommy's here. She's got you, okay? Anna, you're so favorite. You're okay. Alright, you're a good girl. You're a good kitty. Okay. She's so good. You just lay down, my baby. You're Mommy's favorite little kitty, aren't ya? You too, Finny. You too, Toad. Except that you're a dog. Okay, we'll see if she's okay here. I'm like, I'd love to hold her, but I don't know how I can hold her and live stream at the same time. 287G program. Issue a memo prohibiting, I'm trying to rub her hind legs for her where she has her low arthritis, my poor baby. Issue a memo prohibiting any jurisdiction that applies from being denied access to the program unless good cause is shown. Poor girl kitty. Homeland Security Investigations, HSI priorities. Issue Department Management Directive and ICE Companion Directive to refocus HSI on immigration offenses and criminal offenses typically associated with immigration. For example, human trafficking. All criminal investigative work without a clear nexus to the border or otherwise to Title VIII should be turned over to the appropriate federal agency. Blackie's warrants, ICE, OPLA, ERO, and HSI should issue a joint internal memo on operationalizing Blackie's warrants for immediate use on worksite enforcement and other appropriate investigations and operations. I know. I just want to rub your leggies because I feel like they're hurting. Does that not feel good? Okay, if it doesn't, you just let me know. Oh, honey, she gets her Solensia injection soon, so that it helps with her low arthritis. Okay, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Oh my God, the fur is in my eye. Help! Oh, really quick, let me share this. For frick's sake, you guys. Totally ridiculous. Okay. Mother of pearl. One sec, guys. Sorry. It's my friend's birthday. It's my friend's birthday. Okay. All criminal investigative work without a clear nexus to the border or otherwise Title VIII should be turned over to the appropriate federal agency. Blackie's warrants, ICE, OPLA, ERO, and HSI should issue a joint internal memo. on operationalizing Blackie's warrants for immediate use on worksite enforcement and other appropriate investigations and operations. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, needed forms. FEMA is the lead federal agency in preparing for and responding to disasters, but it is overtasked, overcompensates for the lack of state and local preparedness and response, and is regularly in deep debt. After passage of the Stafford Act, of course, the number of declared federal disasters rose dramatically as most disaster costs were shifted from states and local governments. That's not true. To the federal government. That's not true. In addition, state-friendly FEMA regulations such as a per capita indicator failed to maintain the pace of inflation and made it easy to meet disaster declaration thresholds. Well, yeah, that's because it should be easy to meet disaster declaration thresholds. Are you saying that there aren't disasters, or that they're like fake disasters that people are declaring? I don't get it. Anyway, he goes on to say this combination has left FEMA unprepared in both readiness and funding for the truly catastrophic disasters in which its services are most needed. Reform of FEMA requires a greater emphasis on federalism and state and local preparedness, leaving FEMA to focus on large, widespread disasters. Under the Stafford Act, FEMA has the authority to adjust the per capita indicator for damages, which creates a threshold under which states and localities are not eligible for public assistance. FEMA should raise the threshold because the per capita indicator has not kept pace with inflation, and this over time has effectively lowered the threshold for public assistance and caused FEMA's resources to be stretched perilously thin. Alternatively, applying a deductible could accomplish a similar outcome while also incentivizing states to take a more proactive role in their own preparedness and response capabilities. States' rights? Is that what we're saying? Leave it up to the states? In addition, Congress should change the cost share arrangement so that the federal government covers 25% of the costs for small disasters, with the cost share reaching a maximum of 75% for truly catastrophic disasters. So I guess they're not truly catastrophic. They're just regular old, plain old, regular disasters. So they don't count. FEMA is also responsible for the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, nearly all of which is issued by the federal government. Washington provides insurance at prices lower than the actuarially fair rate. Jesus Christ. Thereby subsidizing flood insurance, as they should. Hello? Then when flood costs exceed NFIP's revenue, FEMA seeks taxpayer-funded bailouts. Current NFIP debt is $20.5 billion, and in 2017, Congress canceled $16 billion in debt when FEMA reached its borrowing authority limit. These subsidies and bailouts only encourage more development in flood zones. I don't think that's what's encouraging it, but okay. Increasing the potential losses to both NFIP and taxpayer. The NFIP should be wound down and replaced with private insurance. Holy cannoli, you guys. Starting with the least risky areas currently identified by the program. Budget issues. FEMA manages all grants for DHS, and these grants have become pork for states, localities, and special interest groups. Since 2022, DHS FEMA have provided more than $56 billion in preparedness grants for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. For FY 2023, President Biden requested more than $3.5 billion for federal assistance grants. Funds provided under these programs do not provide measurable gains for preparedness or resiliency. Rather, pardon me, more than any objective needs, political interests appear to direct the flow of non-disaster funds. Okay. Like, he says this while literally trying to politically influence the flow of non-disaster funds. So, like, imagine the fucking audacity. The principles of federalism should be upheld. These indicate that states better understand their unique needs and should bear the costs of their particularized programs. FEMA employees in Washington, D.C. should not determine how billions of federal tax dollars should be awarded to train local law enforcement officers in Texas, harden cybersecurity infrastructure in Utah, or supplement migrant shelters in Arizona. DHS should not be in the business of handing out federal tax dollars, these grants should be terminated. Accomplishing this, Jesus Christ, it's like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas wrote this. Accomplishing this, however, will require action from or by members of Congress who repeatedly vote to fund grants for political reasons. The transition should focus on building resilience and return return on investment in line with real threats. Personnel. Can't wait to hear this one. FEMA currently has 4 Senate confirmed positions. Only the administrator should be confirmed by the Senate. Other political leadership need not be confirmed by the Senate. Additionally, FEMA's springing cabinet position should be eliminated, as this creates significant unnecessary challenges to the functioning of the whole of DHS at points in time when coordinated responses are most needed. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. CISA. Need a reform. CISA is supposed to have 2 key roles. 1, protection of the federal civilian government networks, .gov, while coordinating the that's not fully true. I know where he's going with this, and it's bullshit. Anyway, .gov, while coordinating the execution of national cyber defense and sharing information with non-federal and private sector partners. And 2, national coordination of critical infrastructure security and resilience. Yet CISA has rapidly expanded its scope into lanes where it does not belong, the most recent and most glaring example being censorship of so-called misinformation and disinformation. CISA's funding and resources should align narrowly with the foregoing 2 mission requirements. The components, emergency communications, and chemical facility anti-terrorism standards, CFATS, roles should be moved to FEMA. Absolutely not. Its school security function should be transferred to state Homeland Security offices, and CISA should refrain from duplicating cybersecurity functions done elsewhere at the Department of Defense, which it shouldn't be done there, but okay. FBI, National Security Agency, and U.S. Secret Service. Hey, the FBI likes having that help. I'm not speaking for them, but having worked with them, they're over the moon about having that help. So let's not have Ken Cuccinelli speaking for the FBI, shall we? I'm just saying. I'm not either, but look it up. I'm serious about this. Of the utmost urgency is immediately ending CISA's counter mis and disinformation efforts. The federal government cannot be the arbiter of truth. He already said this. Why is he copy and pasting this again? CISA began this work because of proven Russian misinformation and disinformation in the 2016 election, which in fact turned out to be a Clinton campaign dirty trick. It did not. That is not true. The intelligence community, including the NSA or DoD, should counter foreign actors. At the time of this writing, release of the Twitter files. The Twitter files has been widely debunked, guys. Has demonstrated that CISA has devolved into an unconstitutional censoring and election engineering apparatus of the political left. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've got cat fur in my nose, in my mouth, in my eyes. I'm sorry. In any event, the entirety of the CISA advisory committee should be dismissed on day 1. For election security, CISA should help states and localities assess whether they have good cyber hygiene and in their hardware and software in preparation for an election, but nothing more. That's what they're already doing, fucko. This is of value to smaller localities, particularly by flagging who is attacking their websites. I think just by saying this right here, he doesn't understand how CISA works or how web traffic works, and I think he'd better sit down and shut it when it comes to CISA. But that's just my opinion as a cybersecurity professional. CISA should not be significantly involved closer to an election, nor should it participate in messaging or propaganda. It hasn't, so good thing we don't have to worry about that then. U.S. Coast Guard, USCG. Again, he's just copy and pasting the same stuff over and over again. Need a reforms. The U.S. Coast Guard fleet should be sized to the needs of great power competition, specifically focusing efforts and investment on protecting U.S. waters, all while seeking to find, where feasible, more economical ways to perform USCG missions. The scope of the Coast Guard's mission needs to be focused on protecting U.S. resources and interests in its home waters, specifically its exclusive economic zone, 200 miles from shore. Well, I mean, he has some of this right, but not all of it, and it's a little troubling that he's giving feedback on activity that he clearly doesn't fully understand. Like, this is his assignment, his section of Project 2025. Why? What experience does Ken Cuccinelli have in literally any of this? I can tell you, none. Zero, zip, zilch. I have more. USCG's budget should, I'm not saying I would have written this, just to be clear. USCG's budget should address the growing demand for it to address nice writing, the increasing threat from the Chinese fishing fleet in home waters, as well as narcotics and migrant flows in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Doing this will require reversing years of shortfalls in shipbuilding, maintenance, and upgrades of shore facilities, as well as seeking more cost-effective ship and facility designs. In wartime, the USCG supports the Navy, but it has limited capability and capacity to support wartime missions outside home waters. The policies the Coast Guard's mission set should be scaled down to match congressional budgeting in the long term, with any increased funding going to acquisitions based on an updated fleet mix analysis. The current shipbuilding plan is insufficient based on USCG analysis, and the necessary numbers of planned offshore patrol cutters and national security cutters are not supported by congressional budgets. The Coast Guard should be required to submit to Congress a long-range shipbuilding plan modeled on a Navy's 30-year shipbuilding plan. It's not an extension of the Navy, you goose. Anyway, ideally, he says, this should become part of the Navy plan in a new comprehensive naval long-range shipbuilding plan to ensure better coherency in the service's requirements. Outside of home waters and following the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, the Coast Guard should prioritize limited resources to the nation's expansive Pacific waters to counter growing Chinese influence and encroachment. Expansion of facilities in American Samoa and basing of cutters there. What? Basing of Coast Guard cutters in American Samoa? That's Batty Fruit Loops shit. What the fuck? And basing of cutters there is one clear step in this direction and should be accelerated, looking to free association states, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of the Marshall Islands for enhanced and persistent presence. Assuming adequate congressional funding is another such step. Ugh. The Secretary of the Navy should convene a naval board to review and reset requirements for Coast Guard wartime mission support. To inform and validate these updated requirements, the Chief of Naval Operations and the Coast Guard Commandant should execute dedicated annual joint wartime drills focused on USCG's wartime missions in the Pacific. The money for these activities should be allocated from DoD, an interagency maritime coordination office focused on developing and overseeing comprehensive efforts to advance the nation's maritime interests and increase its military and commercial competitiveness should be established. Given the USCG's history of underfunded missions, if the Coast Guard is to continue to maintain the Arctic mission, money to do so adequately will be required over and above current funding levels. Consideration should be given to shifting the Arctic mission to the Navy. Either way, the Arctic mission should be closely coordinated with our Canadian, Danish, and other allies. Like, to some extent, it almost seems like the Cooch over here, Ken Cuccinelli, has some understanding, like on a base level, that there are actual, like, undersea wire cutting operations in these areas. But he's not speaking outwardly about them, so I'm not really sure what he thinks we're doing in these areas. It's odd. and then talking about focusing on the 200-mile zone around our national waters, like it almost seems, pardon me, it almost seems like he understands this, but then, like you said, he never states it outright. I don't know what he thinks we're doing there. Like, what does he think we're monitoring? What does he think we're doing in the Arctic? What does he think we're doing anywhere in these areas? Like, it's a bizarre kind of like dog fooding like approach. I'm just going to throw in little bits of this and that and the other, and I don't quite understand it, to be honest with you. It's not coherent by any stretch, and the parts that are mildly coherent are horrific, like what we just went over with ICE, what we just went over with CISA. It's disgusting. Personnel, USCG is facing recruitment challenges similar to those faced by the military services. The administration should stop the messaging on wokeness and diversity. What messaging? And focus on attracting the best talent for USCG. Okay, so basically focus on, diversity, equity, and inclusion, then you're saying, Ken. Simultaneously, consistent with the Department of Defense, USCG should also make a serious effort to revet any promotions and hiring that occurred on the Biden administration's watch, while also re-onboarding any USCG personnel who were dismissed from service for refusing to take the COVID vaccine. And vaccines in quotations was time and service credited as such returnees. These two steps could be foundational for any improvements in the recruiting process. Oh my gosh, U.S. Secret Service. Oh, I can't wait for this. Needed reforms. The U.S. Secret Service must be the world's best protective agency. Currently, the agency is distracted by its dual mission of protection and financial investigations. The result has been a long series of high-profile embarrassments and security failures. Perhaps most notably, it's allowing of then Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to be inside the Democratic National Committee office on January 6, 2021, while a pipe bomb was outside. Despite the great size and fair enough on that and scope of the January 6th investigation, this high-profile incident of danger to a protectee remains unresolved. Fair enough on that one. The failures of the USSS protective mission are too numerous to list here. A December 2015 bipartisan report from the House Oversight Committee listed dozens of such incidents as well as needed recommendations for reform. This chapter adopts those findings and recommendations in whole, especially the finding that USSS's dual mission structure detracts from the agency's protective capabilities. At the time of that report, USSS agents spent only 1/3 of their work hours on protection-related activities as opposed to investigative activities. USSS was established initially to investigate counterfeit currency, but it's not exactly. That's partially true. But its mission has evolved over the decades to prioritize electronic financial crimes. For example, as this chapter was being written, all 15 of the USSS's most wanted individuals were wanted for financial crimes, many of them rather, international in nature. Okay? Notably, the last head of but is that why they were on that list? That's my question. He's not really telling us that. You could be telling me they all have brown hair and green eyes, but is that why they're on that list? Notably, the last head of the agency left not for a protection-related job, but to be the chief security officer of social media company Snapchat. Yeah, because he works in fucking security. That's why, Ken. Don't know if you're aware. Security professionals take security jobs, you fucknut. Anyway, this is a pattern that has developed over the years, with agents seeking to burnish their online financial crimes credentials to secure corporate security jobs. Well, coupled with some of the lowest morale in the federal government, the agency has completely lost sight of the primacy of its protective mission. Not really making the case there, buddy, but good try. Like I said, not every swing can be a hit, buddy. Good try, though. Well done. New policies. USSS should transfer to the Department of Justice and Department of the Treasury all investigations that are not related to its protective function. It should begin the logistical operation of closing all field offices throughout the country and internationally to the extent they are not taken over by Treasury or Justice. USSS agents stationed outside of Washington, D.C. should be transferred to work in Immigration and Customs Enforcement field offices, just like the CISA professionals, where they would continue to be the boots on the ground, quote unquote, to follow up on threat reports throughout the country and liaise with local law enforcement for visits by protectees. That's nutty. The only investigations not related to USSS's protective function that agents should pursue would be directed by HSI and relate to tracking the financial crimes associated with illegal immigration. This should include tracing remittances, any funds that are used to pay coyotes or the cartels, and payments by businesses to illegal aliens, and all other crimes associated with illegal immigration. USSS should keep visitor logs for all facilities where the president works or resides. I imagine they do. The Biden administration has evaded such transparency, with President Biden spending historic amount of time for a president as Delaware residents. Tell that to Trump, who's been on his golf course most of his term, but hey. This has left the American people in the dark as to who is influencing the highest levels of their own government. Have you ever heard the saying that people with narcissism often make accusations, but those accusations are confessions? Yeah. Just totally mushing that in lieu of absolutely nothing. No relation to what's happening here. Moving on. Budget. The suggestive reforms would result in a significant USSS budget reduction, primarily because the agency would relinquish, if I could speak, dozens of physical offices throughout the U.S. and internationally. Some amount of savings should be used to fix the personal problems for recruitment initiatives aimed at individuals who are inclined to join a protection-focused agency. As documented extensively in the above-referenced 2015 bipartisan congressional report, low morale and high turnover are key drivers of USSS problems. With their mission focused on protection, agents would no longer spend the bulk of their time developing unrelated skill sets. How dare they have other skills or anything? Fuck, man. Be more like Ken, guys. Have one skill set that's completely under fucking developed, but the amount of confidence that it takes to literally think that you can rule the entire world. That's what we should be doing. Right, guys? With their mission focused on protection, agents would no longer spend the bulk of their time developing unrelated skill sets. Instead, USSS agents could hone their protection skills and pursue a protection career path in the agency rather than quickly leaving USSS for high-paying corporate security jobs. I mean, have you ever thought there could be a reason people are leaving, Ken? Have you ever? No? Okay. Well, there might be, so just stay with me on that, buddy. I know it's hard. The Uniform Division, UD, of USSS requires a significant staffing increase. As documented in the bipartisan report, understaffing results in unpredictable and long hours, which in turn result in high turnover, which only compounds the problem. Another key issue is that UD officers lack the ability to enforce criminal laws outside the immediate vicinity of the White House. Why should they? They're not the fucking U.S. Marshals or something. Come on, man. As the District of Columbia is a federal jurisdiction and currently is beholden to the trend of progressive pro-crime policies, UD officers should enforce all applicable laws. The result would be to allow UD officers to gain more law enforcement experience. What, so they can leave for private law enforcement, Ken? An attractive credential that would improve morale. Pardon me. I apologize. Transportation Security Administration, TSA. The TSA model is costly and unwisely makes TSA both the regulator and the regulated organization responsible for screening operations. As part of an effort to shrink federal bureaucracies and bring private sector know-how to government programs, TSA is ripe for reform. The U.S. should look to the Canadian and European private models of providing aviation screening manpower to lower TSA costs while maintaining security. Until it is privatized, TSA should be treated as a national security provider, and its workforce should be de-unionized immediately. TSA could privatize the screening function by expanding the current screening partnership program. Pardon me. I have no mute button right now. I apologize. To all airports, TSA would turn screening operations over to airports that would choose security contractors that meet TSA regulations and would oversee and test airports for compliance. Alternatively, it could adopt a Canadian-style system, turning over screening operations to a new government corporation that contracts screening service to private contractors. But those aren't security risks, guys. It's the union guys who are security risks. The private contractors are fine, okay? Don't even think about looking into their background. They're fine, I say. Contractors would bid to provide their services to a set of airports in a particular region, likely with around 10 regions nationally. TSA would continue to set security regulations and test airports for compliance, and the new corporation would establish any operating procedures or customer service standards. With either model, the intelligence function for domestic travel patterns should remain with the U.S. government. The federal government could expect to save 15% to 20% from the existing aviation screening budget, but savings could be significantly larger. Service to travelers should also improve. Management Directorate, MGMT, like the band? The Management Directorate is unnecessarily large because each individual component also maintains its own respective management office. Too much overlap and red tape exists between headquarters, HQ, and components with regard to such functions as hiring, information technology, yeah, get rid of the IT people, guys, and procurement. Finance is unique given that HQ needs to address reprogramming and common budget needs to roll up into all department budgets. The directorate requires intent to perform, the specifics of which should be further assessed. Given its expansive nature, front office, FO, immediately place a small team of advisors with a deep understanding of operational management, but who have some experience in the government because they will need to understand the nuance of reduction in force, RAF, appropriations hurdles when dealing with U.S. government reorganization, etc., to sit in the MGMT FO, reporting to the Secretary, ultimately either S1 or S2. One of these advisors should understand U.S. government employment law and be prepared to relocate personnel and downsize offices accordingly. This includes reverting to the original understanding of the function of individuals appointed to the senior executive service. Competent managers who can work capably with any subject matter and in any location. Over the first few months of the administration, the advisor's role should be to assess what structural and procedural changes are appropriate. They should dissect the current standing management directives and the approval process in place to implement and or change them. Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer's processes and procedures, hurdles to the Office of Chief Procurement Officer's procurement of innovative technology, and the facilities plan, including the consolidation into the St. Elizabeth campus. They should also be prepared to help implement any end to unionization of DHS components in response to an executive order pursuant to 5 U.S.C. 7103, Office of the Chief Financial Officer, OCFO. DHS responsibilities to work with Congress have been split between the Office of Legislative Affairs, OLA, and OCFO. OLA deals with the authorizing committees on policy issues, and OCFO works with the Appropriations Committee on budget planning, execution, and reprogramming. This split creates communication and visibility issues within DHS and inconsistency in answers to Congress. This is an issue not only within the HQ model, but also throughout the components. Either appropriations personnel should be moved to OLA, and there should be a quote-unquote dotted line reporting structure to OCFO, or a policy that OLA personnel must be included on communications to Congress should be implemented to To avoid answer shopping by congressional staff, particularly appropriation staff, all budget communications from the OCFO, including from the CFO, him or herself, should first be provided to the director of OLA to ensure consistency of information, messaging, and answers. This may be deemed awkward given that the OCFO is a Senate-confirmed position, but it is necessary to avoid inaccuracies and inconsistencies in messaging. Federal Protective Services, FPS. FPS needs federal agents to develop, share, and receive operational information and maintain direct contact with the security in the midst of heightened threats. Before the summer 2020 civil unrest, positioning FPS under MGMT was justified, but given the current climate, they should not be reporting through MGMT. This may be especially problematic if a management directorate under security lacking law enforcement or military experience is in place when a situation like summer 2020 arises. FPS should report to the secretary as other components, e.g. FLETC, do. This would add little to the secretary's current burden unless or until civil unrest arises, at which point reporting to the secretary creates a direct line between the primary DHS decision maker, S1 or S2, and the FPS director. Regarding operational communication, there should be information sharing mandates, MOAs, like memoranda of understanding, which are applicable under specific circumstances where federal facilities are involved, between FPS and the U.S. Marshals, U.S. Park Police, and FBI. As if there aren't already, you dingus. Anyway, the Cooch goes on to say, agreements with U.S. Capitol Police and Supreme Court Police should also be considered, but it is noteworthy that those entities are jurisdictionally outside of the executive branch. Office of Strategy, Policy, and Plans, PLCY. Department-level reforms. PLCY should perform a complete inventory analysis and reevaluation of the department's domestic terrorism lines of effort to ensure that they are consistent with the President's priorities, congressional authorization, if I could talk, and Americans' constitutional rights. PLCY should likewise do a complete inventory analysis and evaluation of any of the department's work in coordination with social media outlets to censor or otherwise change or affect American speech. PLCY should comprehensively report on and publish this history in full so that the American people can know the facts. The department should remove all personnel who participated in any of this activity. The department has significant authority and budget to provide grants for various purposes. This effort is diffused across components and lacks central policy thought and coordination. PLCY should set a department-wide policy that establishes that establishes how granting choices are to be made and is consistent with the President's priorities. PLCY should clear all granting decisions to ensure that they are consistent with the new policy. PLCY-wide reforms. PLCY should work with Congress to streamline the department's reporting requirements because there has not been a departmental reauthorization bill, and these requirements have been added piecemeal over 2 decades. They significantly overlap and even conflict, wasting resources and distracting from the department's mission. PLCY should seek the elimination of the quadrennial Homeland Security Review. Issue area reforms. PLCY should bolster its immigration statistics program and make it the one-stop shop for the timely production of all department immigration statistics and analysis. Office of Intelligence and Analysis, I&A. The Office of Intelligence and Analysis should be eliminated both because it has not added value and because it has been weaponized for domestic political purposes. The intelligence community, IC, already provides raw intelligence to DHS components. In addition, the FBI, National Counterterrorism Center, and other agencies where necessary already provide holistic threat assessment products to federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, as well as to private sector entities at both the classified and unclassified levels where appropriate. INA's work as an interlocutor between the IC and DHS components individual intelligence operations on the one hand and government and the private sector on the other, as well as between the IC and the components, is at best duplicative. At worst, it is used and discussed in the media as a political tool, resulting in more harm than good to the U.S. government and IC writ large. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is not a member of the IC, should create cyber intelligence products in a collaborative fashion with the National Security Agency and use U.S. Cyber Command. Such efforts would lead to a timelier, usable, classified and unclassified products. What? For stakeholders that exceed the quality and capability of I&A's efforts. That's a nonsensical statement. This same principle applies to other components as well, CBP, TSA, etc. All have their own intelligence, pardon me, all have their own intelligence operations and are better suited with their situated with their subject matter experts to make their own assessments. The National Operations Center, NOC, anyway, within the Office of Operations Coordination, OPS, should absorb those select I&A functions and tactically proficient personnel that need to be maintained. For example, technical support to the National Vetting Center. The remainder of I&A should be eliminated. The OPS entity should maintain IC status, and only intelligence mission set should be to provide situational awareness and the dissemination of operational information or raw intelligence. No analysis or products. What does he think CISA does, though? That's my question. At classified and unclassified levels to executive leadership across the department, not outside of DHS. Blah, blah, blah. Office of the General Counsel, OGC. Needed reforms. OGC should advise principals as to how DHS can execute its missions within the law instead of advising principals as to why they cannot execute regulations, policies, and programs. Instead of each component's chief counsel reporting to the headquarters general counsel with a solid line and indirectly to his or her component head without a dotted line, the accountability should be reversed. Due to the different missions throughout the department, the components can better manage the legal issues of their specific mission than headquarters can. Thus, the chief counsel or equivalent of each component should report directly to the component head, report indirectly to the DHS general counsel, and be accountable to the component head. The report to the general counsel is to ensure consistency of advice across DHS. They want general counsel in like all of these offices, and they want them to be like, I don't know, the main go-to person, the point person. It's odd. OGC should hire significantly more Schedule C political appointees who in turn supervise career staff. Pardon me, and manage their output. DHS's mission is politically charged, and the legal function cannot be allowed to thwart the administration's agenda by providing stilted or erroneous legal positions and decision making. OGC should serve as the center of the response to the legal challenges facing the departments to ensure a streamlined, consistent response to a litany of issues facing the department. Okay, got it. Honestly, though, his writing, it literally reads as if it's been copied and pasted from his like notebook, his digital notebook. It's awful. It is important to ensure consistency across all potential. Oh, and by the way, the reason I mentioned that, guys, so that you're aware, is because he purports to work in fucking communications. Okay, do you understand where we're going with this? Do you understand what I'm saying? Motherfucker purports to work in comms, and this is how he writes. All I'm trying to say. One sec. I do have to take one of my meds right now. Man, like, I don't know what's happening outside, but like my allergies are on fire. Okay, so this OGC thing is really interesting to me. I'm very curious what, I don't know, like final decision was there. What drove them to be like, you know what? Pardon me. Let's make sure the OGC is in on all of this. Let's make sure the OGC is responsible for everything. Anyway, he goes on to say, sorry. Fuck, man, my body's hurting, chronic pain. Christ. Oh, God. So, this is so odd. I'd like to understand kind of who came up with this OGC forward kind of framing. Okay, OGC, pardon me, OGC should serve as the center of the response to the legal challenges facing the department. Blah, OGC should invest in e-discovery software. Should it? And contract with a vendor to manage the department's e-discovery. What does he think CISA's going to make the software for them? This would be beneficial both in litigation and in responding to congressional oversight. Removing delays in e-discovery processing would also reduce the issuance of subpoenas to the department and the generation of negative press for the administration that comes from delayed responses. Pardon me. The old practice of relying on executive secretaries, what is this, 1946? Of relying on executive secretaries' taskings to pull documents for congressional requests does not work. It is slow. The metrics for it's like, Brenda, go to the computer and pull up the, do the computations for me. Oh my God. This is so bizarre. It is slow. The metrics for no shit, Ken. The metrics for what documents are gathered and how are unclear, maybe to you, and the components do not gather responsive material in an efficient manner. Brenda, you sure are my girl Friday. Thank you so much. Document gatherings should come from the office of the Chief Information Officer or a relevant technological element. Sorry, but he's such a goofus within the department that can pull responsive communications quickly. Like a computer can? Fuck, man. This guy. Okay, next time he's on the Daily Beast, I'm coming in hot. That's all I'm saying. Office of Legislative Affairs, OLA, Office of Public Affairs, OPA, and Office of Partnership and Engagement, OPE. DHS's external communications function should be consolidated and reformed so that the President's agenda can be implemented more effectively. The Office of Partnership and Engagement should be merged into the Office of Public Affairs. In many cabinet agencies, outreach to companies and partner organizations is simply performed by the Office of Public Affairs. This would also accomplish a needed DHS organizational and management reform to decrease the number of direct reports to the Secretary. Both public and legislative affairs staff in the component should report directly to their respective headquarters equivalent. This would help to avoid a failure by the department to speak, pardon me, I can't even speak with one voice, to speak with one voice. It would allow the component staff to perform more efficiently, overseen by expert managers in their trade. As if this isn't already happening. Why? This would also allow DHS to respond to crises effectively by shifting staff as needed to the most pressing issues. And again, as if this isn't already happening, and better use underutilized staff at less active components. Only political appointees in OLA should interact directly with congressional staff on all inquiries, including budget and appropriations matters, to prevent congressional staff from answering shopping among, or from answer shopping. This is such an odd, answer shopping, bro. Trying to distinguish what the best method or the most accurate answer is not answer shopping. Answer shopping among HQOLA. It's called clarification, fucknut. Jeez, do your job. DHS OCFO and components, DHS Legislative Affairs Appropriation Staff should be moved from MGMT OCFO into OLA. Regarding components, budget appropriation staff should move from component budget offices into component legislative affairs offices, because dozens of congressional committees and subcommittees either have or claim to have jurisdiction over some DHS function. DHS staff from the secretary on down spend so much time responding to congressional hearing and briefing requests, letters, and questions for the record that they are left with little time to do their assigned job of protecting the homeland. Okay, buddy. The next president, i.e. Trump, right now, should reach an agreement with congressional leadership to limit committee jurisdiction to one authorizing committee and one appropriations committee in each chamber. If congressional leadership will not limit their committee's jurisdiction over DHS, DHS should identify one authorizing and appropriations committee in each chamber and answer only to it. But that's consolidating, huh, Ken? Okay. Just to be sure, just to check. To focus more precisely on the DHS mission, OLA staff should also identify outdated and needless congressional reporting requirements and notify Congress that DHS will cease reporting on such matters. For other congressional reports, OLA should implement a sunset date so that Congress must regularly demonstrate the need for specific data. In both the OPA and OLA, a change in mission and culture is needed. The clients of both components are the President and the Secretary, not the media, external organizations, or Congress. OPA and OLA should change from being compliance correspondents for outside entities airing grievances to serving as messengers and advocates for the President and the Secretary. Office of Operations Coordination, OPS. OPS was originally conceived by then Secretary Jeh Johnson as an then, what are we talking about then? Is an entity tasked with coordinating cross DHS assets on an as-needed basis using a joint operations approach. This role is particularly challenging because of the disparate nature of mission sets across DHS. OPS should absorb a very small number of tactical intelligence professionals from I&A as the rest of I&A is shut down. Such intelligence officers would be a subordinate element within OPS, placed within the National Operations Center. Is he appropriately referring to the National Operations Center as a NOC? Or is he confusing that with like Network Operations Center? It seems like he may be almost using those two terms interchangeably. So I could be mistaken on that, and that could just be my bias as somebody who's worked in cybersecurity. Anyway, the intelligence officers would provide tactical intelligence support for upcoming or ongoing operations in addition to liaising with their agency component counterparts. There would be no strategic, lost my place, intelligence analysis done as part of OPS or its new I&A sub-element. In addition to facilitating all of DHS coordination on a task-by-task basis, OPS would be responsible for ongoing situational awareness for the Secretary and Deputy Secretary. Situational awareness of what, Ken? Jesus Christ. In addition to long-term staffing, OPS would have cycling billets from each of the major agencies and components to facilitate its most effective working relationships across DHS, Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, CRCL and Privacy Office, PRIV. The Homeland Security Act established only an officer of CRCL, not an office. The only substantive function Congress then assigned to the office was to review, was to review and assess information alleging abuses of civil rights. Since then, Congress and CRCL itself have significantly expanded CRCL's scope and size well beyond its original intent or helpful purpose. Anyway, we'll put a pin in that. Moving on. CRCL now operates and views itself as a quasi-DHS Office of Inspector General. I don't think it does, but okay. This results in a considerable waste of limited component resources, which are routinely tasked to address redundant, overly burdensome, and uninformed demands from CRCL.
It is therefore important to recalibrate CRCL's scope and reach. The organizational structure of both CRCL and Privacy Office should be changed to ensure proper alignment with the department's mission. The Office of General Counsel should absorb both CRCL's and PRIV's necessary functions and staff. Although the CRCL officer of the Freedom of Information Act FOIA officer/privacy officer are statutory, their offices are not mandatory. CRCL and PRIV officers and employees should report to a Deputy General Counsel who would be a political appointee. The CRCL officers should focus on equal employment opportunity, EEO compliance, and is that DEI, Kenny? That's a bad boy. Anyway, compliance in the civil liberties function and investigate matters only within headquarters or support components. Operational components, civil liberties officers should investigate incidents regarding their own agencies. That sounds great. The CRCL officers should ensure that all civil liberties or civil rights complaints are sent to the Office of Inspector General, OIG, for review. What could go wrong? If the OIG chooses not to investigate, the CRCL officer should only provide support of information on possible courses of action for complainants. The PRIV officer and FOIA officer should focus on FOIA privacy compliance policy and privacy incident response. The Deputy General Counsel should provide guidance to DHS leadership regarding privacy compliance and privacy incident response to ensure that only U.S. persons and lawful permanent residents are provided protections as required by the Privacy Act. All DHS issuances should be updated to reflect that DHS protects the privacy of individuals as required by the Privacy Act, U.S. persons and lawful permanent residents, the Judicial Redress Act of 2015, and any U.S. European Union data protection and privacy agreement. Because of the lack of public trust in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis, CRCL and PRIV staff should no longer review intelligence products or provide guidance on any intelligence reports. Products or reports, rather. A consistent, clear, and singular message is necessary for DHS's mission. Therefore, all communications and/or meetings with any federal, state, local, or non-governmental groups should be limited to the Deputy General Counsel. In addition, given the narrower scope of work, OGC should disband the outside advisory boards and the more than 50 working groups in which CRCL and PRIV currently participate. Finally, CRCL and PRIV should no longer issue bulletins or periodicals. Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, OIDO, and Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, CISOMB. OIDO, the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, should be eliminated. This requires a statutory change in Section 106 of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020. OIDO was designed, well, I guess designated World War II, but OIDO was designed to create another impediment to detention through an additional layer of so-called oversight. Several agencies already perform detention oversight. ICE conducts internal audits of facilities. Again, count the ways that could go wrong. We'll audit ourselves. And investigates complaints itself against ICE agents through the Office of Professional Responsibility under ICE. Similarly, CBP accepts individual complaints regarding facilities through the Joint Intake Center and manages complaints against agents through the OPR. In addition, CRCL, OIG, GAO, and Congress all perform detention oversight. These multiple bodies place unmanageable and unreasonable burdens on ICE to manage several, sometimes inconsistent audits / inspections at the same time. If OIDO remains a DHS component, the Secretary should immediately issue a directive stripping CRCL of its immigration portfolio. OIDO is in a better position with dedicated resources and immigration experts to perform this function than CRCL is. allowing both offices to conduct detention oversight is duplicative and wasteful. The Secretary should conduct a thorough review of the effectiveness of Directive 0810.1, which is widely interpreted as requiring a wholesale referral of cases to OIG. In reality, OIG investigates only a small fraction of them and often sits on cases for longer than the 5-day window specified in the directive. Meanwhile, the other agencies wait in limbo to execute their duties. Yeah, so expand the OIG. Why is this so hard for you to comprehend, you goose? CISOMB, the Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, should be eliminated. Yeah, that'll definitely ease things up over at the OIG. The DHS bureaucracy is too large, and the Secretary has too many direct reports. CISOMB's policy functions can be performed and sometimes already are by OIG and GAO. The specialized caseworker can be moved into USCIS as a special unit, much like the IRS taxpayer advocate. This will require a statutory change to Section 452 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002. If CISOMB continues as a DHS component, a policy should be issued that prohibits CISOMB from assisting illegal aliens to obtain benefits. We've got to inject some humor. This is so ridiculous. Currently, approximately 15% to 20% of CISOMB's workload consists of helping DACA applicants obtain and renew benefits, including work authorization. This is not the role of an ombudsman. Yeah, it kind of is, though. Sorry. Ow, fuck. Okay. It kind of is, though, the role of an ombudsman, isn't it? In addition, the government should be a neutral adjudicator, not an advocate for illegal aliens. Agency relationships. It is critical to the achievement of the President's policy objectives that all agencies and departments touching immigration policy work in sync with one another. While there are numerous areas in which such cooperation is critical, immigration has proven to be the most difficult. Accordingly, several objectives will be necessary for each of the following departments. Department of Health and Human Services agree to move the Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, to DHS, or alternatively implement an aggressive and regular effort by the Secretary of HHS to ensure that ORR is fully pursuing presidential objectives in support of DHS. Department of Defense assist in aggressively building the border wall system on America's southern border. Additionally, explicitly acknowledge and adjust personnel and priorities to participate actively in the defense of America's borders, including using military personnel and hardware to prevent legal crossings between ports of entry and channel all cross-border traffic to legal ports of entry. Department of Justice agree to move the executive office. Pardon me. The executive fucker. Sorry. Mast cell activation syndrome sucks. What can I say? Agree to move the Executive Office for Immigration Review and the Office of Immigration Litigation to DHS, and or alternatively to treat the administrative law judges, immigration judges, and Board of Immigration Appeals as national security personnel to certify their union, and move to increase hiring significantly to enable the process of more immigration cases. Department of State allow DHS to lead international engagement in the Western Hemisphere on issues of security and migration. He was literally just talking about breaking up DHS entirely, but okay. Additionally, quickly and aggressively address recalcitrant countries' failure to accept deportees by imposing stiff sanctions until deportees are in fact accepted for return, not just promised to be taken. Department of Housing and Urban Development ensure that only U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents utilize or occupy federally subsidized housing. Department of Education deny loan access to those who are not U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents, and deny loan access to students at schools that provide in-state tuition to illegal aliens. Department of Labor, eliminate the 2 of 4 lowest wage levels for foreign workers. Department of the Treasury, implement all necessary regulations both to equalize taxes between American citizens and working visa holders, and to provide DHS with all tax information of illegal aliens as expeditiously as possible. Intelligence community, cooperate in the shrinking or elimination of the I-Day role in the IC. While replacing it with with CBP and HSI representation to the IC. So really quick, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste this little part into our notes. Into our notes in the fuckaroo in the Discord server on Whiteboard. So that was a heinous fucking exercise in absolute futility. Thank you for sitting with me through that. It was horrible. Thank you so much. Fuck. Okay. And just put a little tilly or something so that it replaces the little L placeholder. Oh boy. And how you guys holding up? There we go. Go ahead, do that, and then make that much smaller. Much smaller. Ouch. This is so much. And then let's go ahead and make sure we've got all of that. I figured he'd kind of sum it up to some extent all together, like at some point. And I'm happy that pardon me, and I'm happy that I was right about that. Hold on. There we go. Just making sure that we got this all in the correct area. Okay. And let's just make this smaller and put a cutesy little background up here so that we can see that this is meant to be a part of the overall set of notes and not just some aside that I am making. Okay. Ugh, this is so fucking heinous. I can't even. So, that over there. Pardon me. Fuck. Having some problems here. Anywho. Scooch that behind there. Fucker. I hate this so much. Anyway. But not as much as I hate this, interestingly enough. I'll take the MCAS any day of the week over all this fucking bullshit. Okay. So is that Ken Cuccinelli's section done? Wow. Fucker. Nice. And that's wonderful, actually. That's wonderful. So, okay, hold on. Let's take a look and see. So we're on page 203 of 920. That's not too bad. We're making decent time now. Okay, let's see if we need to, if we, I think we'll start another whiteboard. How about that? Start another whiteboard. Um, okay. Hi, kitty. You're a girl. Oh, there we go. And I think just for my vision, we're gonna give it a black or charcoal background. And I apologize, guys. I'm having some problems here with my MCAS. Okay, put that there. Project 20. Oops, 2025 Part 10. And then let's just leave it at that. In our notes in our whiteboard in the Discord. So starting with Department of State. Okay, let's just put this in our notes right now. Department of State. Okay. Ow, fuckaroni, you guys. Ugh. Okie doke. We'll just put that, make this a lot even darker. Alrighty. So, fucking hello, Department of State. And let's start with some white or some ecru. Let's label this as Department of State. Kyron Skinner. Is he taking wooden nickels for a trip down to Tartarus? No, is he taking is he the ferryman here? Taking us all down to Hades? Okay, so the U.S. Department of State's mission is to bilaterally, multilaterally, and regionally implement the president's foreign policy priorities. Well, it's to serve the excuse me, American citizens, but I guess implement the president's foreign policy priorities to serve U.S. citizens abroad. Yeah, like I said, to advance the economic, foreign policy, and national security interests of the United States. Since the U.S. founding, the Department of State has been the American government's designated tool of engagement with foreign governments and peoples throughout the world. Country names, borders, leaders, technology, and people have changed in more than 2 centuries since the founding, but the basics of diplomacy remain the same, although the department has also evolved throughout the years. At least in the modern era, there is one significant problem that the next president must address to be successful. There are scores of fine diplomats who served the president's agenda, often helping to shape and interpret that agenda. At the same time, however, in all administrations, sorry, I'm trying to fix my keyboard here, there is a tug of war between presidents and bureaucracies, and that resistance is much starker under conservative presidents, due largely to the fact that large swaths of the State Department's workforce and left wing are predisposed to disagree with the conservative president's policy agenda and vision. It should not and cannot be this way. The American people need and deserve a diplomatic machine fully focused on the national interest as defined through the election
of a president who sets the domestic and international agenda for the nation. The next administration, i.e. the Trump administration right now, just to be clear, must take swift and decisive steps to reforge the department into a lean and functional diplomatic machine that serves the president and thereby the American people. Below is the basic but essential roadmap for achieving these repairs. History and context. Oh, goody. Let's get a history lesson from Project 2025. Fuck me. Okay. Founded in 1789, the Department of State was one of the first cabinet-level agencies in the new American government. The first Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, oversaw a small staff diplomatic posts in London and Paris and 10 consular posts. Today, the Department of State has almost 80,000 total employees, including 13,517 Foreign Service employees and 11,683 Civil Service employees, and 275 embassies, consulates, and other posts around the world. In theory, the State Department is the principal agency responsible for carrying out the President's foreign policy and representing the United States and other nations and international organizations. To the extent consistent with presidential policy and federal law, the department also supports U.S. citizens and businesses in other nations and vets foreign nationals seeking temporary or permanent entrance to the United States. The State Department also provides humanitarian security and other assistance to non-U.S. populations in need and otherwise advances and supports the U.S. national interests abroad. Properly led, the State Department can be instrumental for communicating and implementing a foreign policy vision that best serves American citizens as the U.S. Commission on National Security. 21st century, the Hartman-Rudman Commission observed more than 20 years ago the State Department is a crippled institution suffering from an ineffective organizational structure in which regional and functional policies do not serve targeted goals, or integrated goals, and in which sound management, accountability, and leadership are lacking. Unfortunately, this critique remains accurate. The State Department's failures are not due to a lack of resources, and as one expert has observed, the department has significantly more at its disposal than was the case at the end of the Cold War in the mid-1990s. Gosh, you don't say. Tell us more. And at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Again, shocking to hear. A major source, if not the major source, of the State Department's ineffectiveness lies in its institutional belief that as an independent institution that knows what is best for the United States, sets its own foreign policy, and does not need direction from an elected president. Sorry, that didn't make sense. A major source, if not the major source, of the State Department's ineffectiveness lies in its institutional belief that it is an independent institution that knows what is best for the United States, sets its own foreign policy, and does not need direction from an elected president. So it believes it sets its own policy, or it sets its own policy? Figure it out, Chiron. The next president can make the State Department more effective by providing a clear foreign policy vision, selecting political officials and career diplomats that will enthusiastically turn that vision into a policy agenda, and firmly supporting the State Department as it makes the necessary institutional adjustments. Political leadership and bureaucratic leadership and support. Focusing the State Department on the needs and goals of the next president will require the president's hand-picked political leadership, as well as foreign service and civil service personnel who share the president's vision and policy agendas to run the department. This can be done by taking these steps at the outset of the next administration. I'm like drowning in my own body right now. I'm so sorry. Excerpt
leverage during the confirmation process, notwithstanding the challenges and slowness of the modern U.S. Senate confirmation process. The next president can exert leverage on the Senate, rather, if he or she is willing to place Senate or State Department, rather, appointees directly into these roles. Okay, if he or she is willing to place State Department appointees directly into those roles, pending confirmation. Doing so would both ensure that the department has immediate senior political leadership and would force the Senate to act on nominees' appointments instead of being allowed to engage in dilatory tactics that cripple the State Department's functionality for weeks, months, or even years. Assert leadership in the appointed process. The next administration, aka right now, Trump administration, should assert leadership over and guidance to the State Department by placing political appointees in positions that do not require Senate confirmation, including senior advisors, principal deputy assistant secretaries, and deputy assistant secretaries. Given the department's size, the next administration should also increase the number of political appointees to manage it to the extent possible. All non-confirmed senior appointees should be selected by the president-elect's transition team or the new president's office of presidential personnel, depending on the timing of selection, and be in place the first day of the administration. No one in a leadership position on the morning of January 20th should hold that position at the end of the day. These recommendations do not imply that foreign service and civil service officials should be excluded from key roles. It is hard to imagine a scenario in which they are not immediately relevant to the transition of power. The main suggestion here is that as many political appointees as possible should be in place at the start of a new administration. Pardon me. Support and train political appointees. The Secretary of State should use his or her office and its resources to ensure regular coordination among all political appointees, which should take the form of strategy meetings, trainings, and other events. The Secretary should also take reasonable steps to ensure that the State Department's political appointees are connected to other departments' political appointees, which is critical for cross-agency effectiveness and morale. The Secretary should capitalize on the more experienced political appointees by using them as a foundation for a mentorship program for less experienced political appointees. The interaction of political appointees must be routine and operational rather than incidental or occasional, and it must be treated as a crucial dimension for the next administration, i.e. the Trump administration. Part 2 right now is administrative success. Maximize the value of career officials. Career foreign service and civil service personnel can and must be leveraged for their expertise and commitment to the president's mission. Indeed, the State Department has thousands of employees with unparalleled linguistic, cultural, policy, and administrative skills, and large numbers of them have been an enormous resource to the Secretaries of State under which they have served. The Secretary must find a way to make clear to officials that despite prior history and modes of operation, they need not be adversaries of a conservative president, Secretary of State, or the team of political appointees. Reboot ambassadors worldwide. All ambassadors are required to submit letters of resignation at the start of a new administration. Previous Republican administrations have accepted the resignations of only the political ambassadors and allowed the Foreign Service ambassadors to retain their posts, sometimes for months or years, into a new administration. The next administration must go further. It should both accept the resignations of all political ambassadors and quickly review and reassess all career ambassadors. This review should commence well before the new administration's first day. Ambassadors in new countries where U.S. policy or posture would substantially change under the new administration, as well as any who have evidenced hostility toward the incoming administration or its agenda, should be recalled immediately. Oh my gosh. The priority should be to put in place new ambassadors who support the president's agenda among political appointees. Foreign service officers and civil service personnel with no predetermined percentage among these categories. Political ambassadors with strong personal relationships to the president should be prioritized for key strategic posts such as Australia, Japan, the United Kingdom, the United Nations, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Righting the ship. And this is a really infamous section of this document. Righting the ship, ensuring the State Department is accountable for serving American citizens, first will require at minimum that the following steps be implemented immediately. Review retroactively. Before inauguration, the President-elect's Department Transition Team should assess every aspect of State Department negotiations and funding commitments. Upon inauguration, the Secretary of State should order an immediate freeze on all efforts to implement unratified treaties and international agreements, allocation of resources, foreign assistance, disbursements, domestic and international contracts, and payments, hiring and recruiting decisions, etc., pending a political appointee-driven review to ensure that such efforts comport with the new administration's policies. The quality of this review is more important than speed. The posture of the department during this review should be an unwavering desire to prioritize the American people, including a recognition that the federal government must be a diligent steward of taxpayer dollars. Implement repair. The State Department must change its handling of international agreements to restore constitutional governance. Under prior administrations, unnecessary institutional factors in the department caused numerous logistical challenges in negotiating, approving, and implementing treaties and agreements. This is particularly true under the Biden administration. For example, under the Biden administration, the State Department was considered sufficiently unreliable in terms of alignment and effectiveness such that its political leadership invoked its Circular 175, C-175 authority to delegate its diplomatic capacity to other agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security. At time of publication, the State Department is negotiating or seeking to negotiate large-scale sovereignty eroding agreements that could come at considerable economic and other costs to the American people. Although such agreements should be evaluated and improved, as are treaties, the Biden administration is likely to simply call them quote-unquote agreements. The Biden State Department not only approves, but also enforces treaties that have not been ratified by the U.S. Senate. This practice must be thoroughly reviewed and most likely jettisoned. The next president, i.e. Trump right now, should recalibrate how the State Department handles treaties and agreements, primarily by restoring constitutionality to these processes. He or she should direct the Secretary of State to freeze any ongoing treaty or international agreement negotiations and assess whether those efforts align with the new president, i.e. Trump right now's foreign policy direction. The next administration, Trump right now, should also direct the Secretary to order an immediate stand-down enforcement of any treaties that have not been ratified by the Senate and order a thorough review of the degree to which such enforcement has impacted the department's functions, policies, and use of resources. The Secretary of State, in cooperation with the Office of the Attorney General and the White House Counsel's Office, should also conduct a review to identify quote-unquote agreements that are really treaty commitments within the ordinary public meaning of the Constitution and suspend compliance pending presidential transmittal of those agreements to the Senate for advice and consent. The next administration should also move to withdraw from treaties that have been under Senate consideration for 20 years or more, with the understanding that those treaties are unlikely to be ratified. Under circumstances in which ratification of a stale treaty before the Senate still serves national interests, the treaty letter of transmittal and submission should be updated for current circumstances. The Secretary of State must revoke most outstanding C-175 authorities that have been granted to other agencies during previous administrations, although such revocation should be closely coordinated with the White House for logistical reasons. Coordinate with other agencies, interagency engagement in this new environment must be similarly adjusted to mirror presidential direction. Indeed, coordination among federal agencies is challenging even in the most well-oiled administrations. Although such coordination is inescapable and sometimes productive, agencies tend to leverage each other's resources in ways that occasionally have off-mission consequences for the agency or agencies with the resources. Ideally, the Secretary of State should work as part of an agile foreign policy team, along with the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of Defense, and other agency heads to flesh out in advance the president's foreign policy. Bureaucratic stovepipes of the past should be less important than commitment to achievement of the president's foreign policy agenda. Well, I'm not sure if I agree with that in terms of the State Department, but this is one of the more measured sections so far in this document, which of course is like saying that this is one of the least smelliest pieces of dog shit in my backyard. This is one of the least smelly pieces of cat shit in the litter box. I'm not saying it smells like roses, I'm just saying it doesn't smell as much like shit as the other pieces. Coordinate with Congress. Congress has both the statutory and appropriations authority to impact the State Department's operations and has a strong interest in key aspects. One sec, we have to do a little housekeeping here. Okay. One sec. One sec, guys, I apologize. Okay. Yeah, we've got this dude banned. Okay. Coordinate with Congress. Congress has both the statutory and appropriations authority to impact the State Department's operations and has a strong interest in key aspects of American foreign policy. The department must therefore take particular care in its interaction with Congress, since poor interactions with Congress, regardless of intentions, could trigger congressional pushback or have other negative impacts on the president's agenda. I mean, that's fair, actually. Like, this isn't completely batty like the last few sections have been. This will require particularly strong leadership of the Department of State's Bureau of Legislative Affairs. The Secretary of State and political leadership should ensure full coordination with the White House regarding congressional engagement on any State Department responsibility. This may lead to, for example, the President authorizing the State Department to engage with members of Congress and relevant committees on certain issues, including statutorily designed congressional consultations, but to remain quote-unquote radio silent on volatile or designated issues on which the House wants to be the primary or only voice, the White House rather wants to be the primary or only voice. I mean, to me, this almost seems like we're saying we need to make the State Department partisan, but okay. All such authorized department engagements with Congress must be driven and handled by political appointees in conjunction with career officials who have the relevant expertise and are willing to work in concert with the president's political appointees on particularly sensitive matters. Really quick, I'm going to drop that link again because we do actually need everybody to know what the Discord link is. For fuck's sake, I'm an idiot. Okay, hold on. We do need everybody to know what the link is because we've got all of our notes up at this link right now. So it is going to be right here. I'll just copy, I'll paste it, and I'll pin it again. We've got our notes, we've got our whiteboard. Okay. Here we go. Notes, whiteboard, etc. Okay. Anywho, moving on. Oh, and while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add here in notes right here, I'm just going to make it clear that this is my opinion. When it's in yellow, that's generally what this is. I'll just say notes. Pardon me, guys. I apologize. We'll be respectful and call him Mr. Skinner. Mr. Skinner, aisle 9. Skinner's opinions regarding the State Department to be fairly innocuous, except that while he seems to want career officials still in place for their expertise, he also wants the State Department to apparently, pardon me, holy fuck, become a partisan apparatus. I think that's, we don't need to really say more than that. It's fairly obvious what he wants, what he's looking for, right? Let's go ahead and continue with this. So, this is so interesting. So anyway, moving back up here, respond vigorously to the Chinese threat. The State Department recently opened the Office of China Coordination, or China House. This office is intended to bring together experts inside and outside the State Department to coordinate U.S. government relations with China and advance our vision, for an open, inclusive international system. Whether China House will streamline U.S. government communication, consensus, and action on China policy, given the presence of other agencies with strong competing or adverse interests, remains to be seen. The unit is dependent on adequate and competent staff being assigned by other bureaus within the State Department. Nonetheless, the concept is one a Republican administration should support, mutatis mutandis. Wow, okay. Like as is. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been at war with the U.S. for decades. Now that it's especially cyber warfare, that's actually true. Now that this reality has been accepted throughout the government, the State Department must be prepared to lead the U.S. diplomatic effort accordingly. The centralization of efforts in one place is critical to this end. Review immigration and domestic security requirements. Arguably, the department's most noteworthy challenge on the global stage has been its handling of immigration and domestic security issues, which are inextricably related. The State Department's apparent posture toward these two issues, which are of paramount importance to the American people, has historically been that they are of lesser importance than other issues and that they can be treated as concessions in broader diplomatic engagements. In other instances in which access to the U.S. in the form of immigrant, permanent, and non-immigrant temporary visas could potentially serve as diplomatic leverage, it is almost never used. To some degree, the State Department and many of its personnel appear to view the U.S. immigration system less as a tool for strengthening the U.S. and more as a global welfare program. Yeah, that's just simply not true. Pardon. So I'm going to kind of copy and paste this little section into the notes here. To ensure the safety, security, and prosperity of all Americans, this must change. Below are several key areas in which the department's formal and informal postures must adjust to reflect the current immigration and domestic security environment. Okay. Okay. We'll put this in notes. This is definitely important. Mr. Skinner. Okay, I'll stop. Okay. White or eggshell or ecru. In text color. Here we go. So, perfect. We've got that in. And we're gonna put in the steps that he's suggesting that we take below. Oh crap, let's make that just a teensy bit smaller, so we've got a little bit more space for our notes. We don't want to go nuts, just a little smaller. So let's go ahead and put visa reciprocity first in our notes. We'll copy and paste it right in there.
because I tend to think this is going to be a big deal and that we're going to need this in here. Okay, let's go ahead and put a tilde for sort of the hold point, or the point number 1. Okay, so this is a lot though. Anyway, moving on. Visa reciprocity. The United States should strictly enforce the doctrine of reciprocity when issuing visas to all foreign nationals. For too long, the U.S. has provided virtually unfettered access to foreign nationals from... no, it hasn't. Again, guys, please go play the... I know it's the Cato Institute, Boo Hiss, etc., but play their game, the green card game. Please. I beg of you. Just play it. It is based on actual U.S. immigration law, and it will give you an accurate representation of what it's like to actually attempt to emigrate from your country and immigrate here to the United States. Let me tell you, when I say it's not easy, that is a huge understatement. So check it out, try it, give it a try, see what you think, let me know. Let me know when you have, and I'd love to know your thoughts, because again, it is mind-blowing. It really is. It'll change your mind on a lot of things. A lot of people will be like, oh, do it the right way, come here the right way, blah, blah, blah. It'll change your mind, I promise you. You'll see how hard it is to do it the right way. Okay? So no, we are not being lenient with visas. We're not being lenient with immigration, pardon me, with immigration on any front, in any way. Okay, and I hate that they're using terms like right sizing. Like, fuck you, this is not right sizing. We're literally cutting staff, okay, that we need desperately. So no, it's wrong sizing, if anything. Dang it. So visa sanctions, section 243D, visa sanctions under section 243D of the National Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, enacted and to allow to motivate countries to accept the return of any nationals who have been removed from the U.S., should be quickly and fully enforced. Recalcitrant countries that do not accept receipt of their return nationals will risk the suspension of issuance of all immigrant visas. That's fucking xenophobic as shit. All non-immigrant visas are all visas. I love that we act like this could not possibly come back to bite us ever. These country-specific sanctions should remain in place until the sanctioned country accepts the return of all its removal pending nationals and formally commits to future regular acceptance of its nationals. Black letter implementation of this law will demonstrate a heretofore lacking seriousness to the international community that other nations must respect U.S. immigration laws and work with federal authorities to accept returning nationals or lose access to the U.S. Again, I think that could work both ways, buddy. No? Ugh, God. That makes me nuts. Okay, so let's go ahead and... there we go. Just copy that, paste it. It's just, it's showing an ugly side of us, to say the least. Anyway, I'm going to expand that. And then in my little notes, I'm going to go ahead and put, pardon me, and here's where it gets xenophobic. Okay. That's really gross. Yeah. Right sizing refugee admissions.
The Biden administration has engineered what is nothing short of a collapse of U.S. border security and interior immigration enforcement. This administration's humanitarian crisis, which is arguably the greatest humanitarian crisis in the modern era, one which has harmed Americans and foreign nationals alike, will take many years and billions of dollars to fully address. One casualty of the Biden administration's behavior will be the current form of the U.S. Refugee Admission Program, U.S. RAP. That makes me so sad, to hear. They really are working hard to get rid of that, aren't they? So, pardon me. Okay, right sizing. Yeah, we gotta throw this into the notes too, unfortunately. This is really bad. Oy. So bad. Pardon me? Just move that down a little. There we go. Got it. Well, and so the Biden administration has engineered what is nothing short of a collapse of U.S. border security and interior immigration enforcement. This administration's humanitarian crisis, which is arguably the greatest, like we said, humanitarian crisis in the modern era, one which has harmed Americans and foreign nationals alike, will take many years and billions of dollars to fully address. One casualty of the Biden administration's behavior will be the current form of the U.S. Refugee Admission Program. Sorry, U.S. RAP. Again, not really, but okay. And this does not seem national security essential, but fair enough, I guess. Let's see what else is said in this section. The federal government's obligation to shift national security, essentially screening and vetting resources to the, forged border crisis will necessitate an indefinite curtailment of the number of U.S. RAP refugee admissions. The State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, which administers U.S. RAP, must shift its resources to challenges stemming from the current immigration situation until the crisis can be contained and refugee-focused screening and vetting capacity can reasonably be restored. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to have to put all of this into notes, but I think this part particularly is important. Let me know if you feel differently. Right. Let's keep going here. Strengthening bilateral and multilateral immigration-focused agreements. Restoration, CAPFR, of both domestic security and the integrity of the U.S. immigration system should start with rapid reactivation of several key initiatives in effect at the conclusion of the Trump administration. When they're talking about the Trump administration, obviously they're talking about Trump administration number 1. This was obviously written before Trump administration part 2 took place. So, re-implementation of the Remain in Mexico policy, safe third country agreements, and other measures to address the influx of non-Mexican asylum applicants in the United States. Mexico border must be day one priorities. Although the State Department must rein in the C-175 authorities of other agencies, the Department of Homeland Security should retain or regain C-175 authorities for negotiating bilateral and multilateral security agreements. Evaluation of national security of vulnerable visa programs. To protect the American people, the State Department, in coordination with the White House and other security-focused agencies, should... So the White House is a security-focused agency. Got it. I'm just being pedantic. Should evaluate several key security-sensitive visa programs that it manages. Key programs include, but should not be limited to, the Diversity Visa Program, the F Student Visa Program, and J Exchange Visitor Visa Program. The State Department's evaluation must ensure that these programs are not only consistent with White House immigration policy, but also aligned with national security obligations and resource limitations. Pivoting abroad, personnel and management adjustments are crucial preludes to refocus the State Department's mission which is influencing the president's foreign policy agenda, and in so doing, ensuring that the interests of American citizens are given priority. That said, the next president must significantly reorient the U.S. government's posture toward friends and adversaries alike, which will include much more honest assessments about who are friends and who are not. This reorientation could represent the most significant shift in core foreign policy principles and corresponding actions since the end of the Cold War. Although not every country or issue area can be discussed in this chapter, below are examples of several areas in which a shift in U.S. foreign policy is not only important but arguably existential. Okay, we'll copy and paste that little part. God, I've got cat fur. The point, the point is not to assert that everyone in the evolving conservative movement, or in some cases, the growing bipartisan consensus, you wish, will agree with the details of this assessment. Rather, what is presented below demonstrates the urgency of these issues and provides a general roadmap for analysis. In a world on fire, a handful of nations require heightened attention. Some represent existential threats to the safety and security of the American people, others threaten to hurt the U.S. economy, and others are wild cards whose full threat scope is unknown but nevertheless unsettling. The 5 countries on which the next administration should focus its attention and energy are China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, and North Korea. Well, I mean, I would say China, Iran, Russia, North Korea, and Israel, but they're our best ally ever, so. Yay, Israel, right? Yay, Zionism, or whatever. Anyway, moving on. We're going to copy and paste this into our notes here. Right sizing. Oh, that's so annoying. It's called downsizing. Just call it what it is. Anywho. Let's go ahead and put this in. The People's Republic of China. Oh, and let's put this in our notes too. Let's put this in our notes too, because I think this is important. We'll just do an ellipses and we'll copy that, paste that in. Boom. Bing bop, boom bop, boom bop, bam. It's the type of shit on when you wouldn't understand. The type of hit someone you wouldn't understand. Okay. There. So the People's Fucker. The People's Republic of Holy Fuck, I'm annoyed. The People's Republic of China. The designs of the People's Republic of China, PRC. Fuck. Pardon me. And the Chinese Communist Party, which runs the PRC, are serious and dangerous. This tyrannical country with a population of more than 1 billion people has the vision, resources, and patience to achieve its objectives. Protecting the United States from the PRC's designs requires an unambiguous offensive defensive mix, including protecting American citizens and their interests, as well as U.S. allies from the PRC attacks and abuse that undermine U.S. competitiveness, security, and prosperity. The United States must have a cost-imposing strategic response to make Beijing's aggression unaffordable, even as the American economy and U.S. power grow. This stance will require real, sustained, near unprecedented U.S. growth, stronger partnerships, synchronized economic and security policies, and American energy independence, but above all, it will require a very honest perspective of what the nature and designs of the PRC is more of a threat than a competitor. The next president should, i.e. Donald Trump, second term, should use the State Department and its array of resources to reassess and lead this effort, just as it did during the Cold War. The U.S. government needs an Article 10 or Article X for China, and it should be a presidential mandate. Along with the National Security Council, the State Department should draft an Article X or Article 10, which should be a deeply philosophical look at the China challenge. That's interesting, to say put that in our notes. Okay. Expand that a bit. And let's go on. Many foreign policy professionals and national leaders, both in government and the private sector, are reluctant to take decisive action regarding China. Many are vested in an unshakable faith in the international system and global norms. They are so enamored with them they cannot brook any criticisms or reforms, let alone acknowledge their potential for being abused by the PRC. Others refuse to acknowledge Beijing's malign activities and often pass off criticism as conspiracy theories. Oh, God. For instance, many were quick to dismiss even the possibility that COVID-19 escaped from a Chinese research laboratory. So, buddy, are you asserting that it did, or are you going to shut the fuck up? I guess you're asserting that it did. Anyway, this guy goes on to say, the reality, however, is that the PRC's actions often do sound like conspiracy theories because they are conspiracies. In addition, some knowingly or not parrot the communist line. Global leaders, including President Joe Biden, the noted communist, right, have tried to normalize or even laud Chinese behavior. In some cases, these voices, like the global corporate giants, BlackRock and Disney, directly benefit from doing business with Beijing. What point are you trying to make there, bud? That Disney's a communist organization, that BlackRock's serving communist principles. What are they going to come out in favor of the proletariat? Come on. On the other hand, others acknowledge the dangers posed by the PRC, but believe in a moderating approach to accommodate its rise. To accommodate its rise, a policy of compete where we must, but cooperate where we can, including on issues like climate change. Hold on. I'll make sure this thing doesn't go fucking flying. Including on issues like climate change, this strategy has demonstrably failed. Okay, how? As with all global struggles with communist and other tyrannical regimes, the issue should never be the Chinese people, but the issue should never be with the Chinese people, but with the communist dictatorship that oppresses them and threatens the well-being of nations across the globe. That said, the nature of Chinese power today is the product of history, ideology, and the institutions that have governed China during the course of 5 millennia, inherited by the present Chinese leaders from the preceding generations of the CCP. In short, the PRC challenge is rooted in China's strategic culture and not just the Marxism-Leninism of the CCP. We can disagree about that later, meaning that internal culture and civil society will never deliver a more normative nation. Internal culture and civil society will never deliver a more normative nation. The PRC's aggressive behavior can only be curbed through external pressure. The Islamic Republic of Iran, the ongoing protests in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which are widely viewed as a new revolution, have shown that the Islamic regime, wow, how many times can we say Islamic in one paragraph? Take a shot each time you hear the term Islamic, which has been, actually don't, you'll wind up with alcohol poisoning. I don't want responsibility for that. Which has been in power since 1979 when Ayatollah Khomeini became the leader. Is at its weakest state in its history and is at odds not only, well, isn't that interesting? It's at its weakest state in history, guys. That's why we've gone to war with it. Ugh. Yeesh. You know what? Fuck, I'm not going to copy and paste that. And is at odds not only with its own people, but also its regional neighbors. Iran is home to a proud and ancient culture, yet its people have struggled to achieve democracy and have had to endure a hostile theocratic regime that vehemently opposes freedom. The time may be right to press harder on the Iranian theocracy, support the Iranian people, and take other steps to draw Iran into the community of free and modern nations. So basically do regime change. Again, we're just saying the quiet part fully out loud. Unfortunately, the Obama and Biden administrations have propped up the brutal Islamist theocracy that has hurt the Iranian people and threatened nuclear war. For example, the Obama administration's 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan for Action, commonly referred to as the Iran nuclear deal, gave the Islamic regime a crucial monetary lifeline after the Green Movement protests in 2009, which, while ultimately unsuccessful, did succeed in weakening the regime and showing the world that younger Iranians want freedom. Actually, the Iran deal was quite good. The Iran nuclear deal was quite good, but it's been dismantled now, guys. Don't worry. And a shittier deal has been made in its place. Instead of pressuring the Iranian theocracy to move toward democracy, why should they? The Obama administration threw the brutal regime an economic lifeline by giving hundreds of billions of dollars to the Iranian government and providing other sanctions relief. This economic relief did not moderate the regime, but emboldened its brutality, its efforts to expand its nuclear weapons program, and its support for global terrorism. Former President Obama has admitted to his lack of support for the Green Movement during his administration, that it was an error, and blamed it on poor advisors. Yet those same advisors are involved with the Biden administration's insistence on reducing pressure on the theocracy and resurrecting a nuclear deal. I apologize, but Russian blue mixes have a fuck of a type of fur. I swear to God, like it just floats. It gets like in your mouth, your eyes, your nose, on your clothes. It doesn't come off. It gets on your skin. But it's also the softest little fur that you've ever felt to cuddle with a kitty. So the administration should neither preserve nor repeat the mistakes of the Obama and Biden administrations. The correct future policy for Iran is one that acknowledges that it is in U.S. national security interests, the Iranian people's human rights interests, and broader global interest in peace and stability for the Iranian people to have the democratic government they demand. This decision to be free of the country's abusive leaders must, of course, be made by the Iranian people, but the United States can utilize its own and others' economic and diplomatic tools to use the path toward a free Iran and a renewed relationship with the Iranian people. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. What's the model of democracy and a true U.S. ally? The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Venezuela has all but collapsed under the communist regimes of the late Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. Don't worry, we've kidnapped him. He's now in the same jail in New York that Epstein was in. Yay. In the 24 years since Hugo Chavez was first elected Venezuelan president in 1999, the country has violently cracked down on pro-democracy citizens and organizations, shattered its once oil-rich economy, empowered domestic criminal cartels, and helped fuel a hemispheric refugee crisis. Venezuela has swung from being one of the most prosperous, if not the most prosperous country in South America, to being one of the poorest. Cash couldn't have anything to do with our activities, could it? Not possible. Never that. Its communist leadership is also drawn closer to some of the United States' greatest international foes, including the PRC and Iran. Hello, Russia? Anyone? Israel? Anyone? I'm sorry, Israel, our greatest ally? Anyone? Which have long sought a foothold in the Americas. Indeed, Venezuela serves as a reminder of just how fragile democratic institutions that are not maintained can be. To contain Venezuela's communism and aid international partners, the next administration, i.e. Trump Part 2, must take important steps to put Venezuela's communist abusers on notice while making strides to help the Venezuelan people. The next administration must work to unite the hemisphere against a significant but underestimated threat in the southern hemisphere, Russia. One issue today that starkly divides conservatives is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Well, it shouldn't, but okay. The common ground seems to be recognition that presidential leadership in 2025 must chart the course. One school of conservative thought holds that as Moscow's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine drags on, Russia presents major challenges to U.S. interests as well as to peace, stability, and the post-Cold War security in Europe. This viewpoint argues for continued U.S. involvement, including military aid, economic aid, and the presence of NATO and U.S. troops if necessary. The end goal of the conflict must be the defeat of President Vladimir Putin of Russia and a return to pre-invasion borderlines. Another school of conservative thought denies that U.S.-Ukrainian support is in the national security interest of America at all. Ukraine is not a member of the NATO alliance and is one of the most corrupt nations in the region. Okay. European nations directly affected by the conflict should aid in the defense of Ukraine, but the U.S. should not continue its involvement. This viewpoint desires a swift end to the conflict to renegotiate settlement between Ukraine and Russia. The tension between these competing positions has given rise to a third approach. This conservative viewpoint eschews both isolationism and interventionism. Rather, each foreign policy decision must first ask the question, what is in the interest of the American people? U.S. military engagement must clearly fall within U.S. interests, be fiscally responsible, and protect American freedom, liberty, and sovereignty, all while recognizing Communist China as the greatest threat to U.S. interests. Okay. Thus, with respect to Ukraine, continued U.S. involvement must be fully paid for, limited to military aid, while European allies address Ukraine's economic needs and have a clearly defined national security strategy that does not risk American lives. Regardless of viewpoints, all sides agree that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is unjust and that the Ukrainian people have a right to defend their homeland. Furthermore, the conflict has severely weakened Putin's military strength and provided a boost to NATO unity and its importance to European nations. The next conservative president, i.e. Trump right now, has a generational opportunity to bring a resolution to the foreign policy tensions within the movement and chart a new path forward that recognizes Communist China as a defining threat to U.S. interests in the 21st century. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Peace and stability in Northeast Asia are vital interests of the United States. The Republic of Korea, South Korea, and Japan are critical allies for ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. They are indispensable military, economic, diplomatic, and technology partners. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, or North Korea must be deterred from military conflict. The United States cannot permit the DPRK to remain a de facto nuclear power with the capacity to threaten the United States or its allies. This interest is both critical to the defense of the American homeland and the future of global non-proliferation. The DPRK must not be permitted to profit from its blatant violations of international commitments or to threaten other nations with nuclear blackmail. Both interests can only be served if the U.S. disallows the DPRK's rogue regime behavior. Other international engagements, Western Hemisphere. The United States has a vested interest in a relatively united and economically prosperous Western Hemisphere. Nonetheless, the region now has an overwhelming number of socialist or progressive regimes. A new approach is therefore needed, one that simultaneously allows the U.S. to reposture in its best interests and helps regional partners enter a new century of growth and opportunity. The following core policies must be part of this new direction. A sovereign Mexico policy. Mexico is currently a national security disaster. Bluntly stated, Mexico can no longer qualify as a first world nation. I mean, that could be true for us, but not Mexico. It has functionally lost its sovereignty to muscular criminal cartels that effectively run the country. The current dynamic is not good for either U.S. citizens or Mexicans, and the perfect storm created by this cartel state has negative effects that are damaging the entire hemisphere. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, must both adopt a posture that calls for a sovereign Mexico and take all steps at its disposal to support that result in as rapid a fashion as possible. Fentanyl-free frontier, the same cartels that parasitically run Mexico are also working with the PRC to fuel the largest drug crisis in the history of North America. These Mexican cartels are working closely with the Chinese fentanyl precursor chemical manufacturers, importing these precursor chemicals into Mexico, manufacturing fentanyl on Mexican soil, and shipping it into the United States and elsewhere. The highly potent narcotic is having an unprecedented lethal effect on the American citizenry. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, must leverage its new insistence on a sovereign Mexico and work with other Western Hemisphere partners to halt the fentanyl crisis and put a decisive end to this unprecedented public health threat. Yeah, or we could, I don't know, stop fighting the war on drugs, all I'm saying. Hemisphere-centered approach to industry and energy. The next administration is a golden opportunity to make key economic changes that will not only provide tremendous economic opportunities for Americans, but will also serve as an economic boon to the entire Western Hemisphere. First, the United States must do everything possible with both resources and messaging to shift global manufacturing and industry from more distant points around the globe, especially from the increasingly hostile and human rights abusing PRC, to Central and South American countries. Re-hemisphering manufacturing and industry closer to home will not only eliminate some of the more recent supply chain issues that damage the U.S. economy, but will also represent a significant economic improvement for parts of the Americas in need of growth and stabilization. Similarly, the United States must work with Mexico, Canada, and other countries to develop a hemisphere-focused energy policy that will reduce reliance on distant and manipulable sources of fossil fuels, restore the free flow of energy among the hemisphere's largest producers, and work together to increase energy production, including for nations that are looking for dramatic economic expansion. A local approach to security threats. Western Hemisphere nations, including those in the Caribbean, arguably have stronger cultural and historical ties to the United States than most other countries and regions in the world. Yet Central and South America are moving rapidly into the sphere of anti-American external state actors, including the PRC, Iran, and Russia. Now, Russia is true. Israel, also true. Whoops, I didn't mean Israel. They're our greatest ally. Yeah, Zionism or whatever. Specific countries in the Americas, such as Venezuela, Colombia, Guyana, and Ecuador, are either increasingly regional security threats in their own rights, or are vulnerable to hostile extracontinental powers. Well, duh. I mean, again, Russia and our greatest ally, Israel, who would never do that, are definitely having influence there, and misinformation are a big problem there. They're importing mis and disinformation into these countries that's then affecting both those countries and the United States and the rest of the world. It's kind of a serious threat. It's been ongoing for a long time, right? The U.S. has an opportunity to lead these democratic neighbors, he says, to fight against the external pressure of threats from abroad and address local or regional security concerns. This leadership and collaboration must span all tools at the disposal of U.S. allies and partners, including security-focused cooperation, Middle East and North Africa. The next administration must re-engage with Middle Eastern and North African nations and not abandon the region. Without U.S. leadership, the region may tumble further into the chaos or fall prey to American adversaries. This recommendation requires a multidimensional strategy. First, the U.S. must prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear technology. Well, they were never going to, but okay. And deliver capabilities and more broadly block Iranian ambitions. We already had the nuclear deal, but Trump ruined that. This means, inter alia, reinstituting and expanding Trump administration sanctions, providing security assistance for regional partners, supporting through public diplomacy and otherwise freedom-seeking Iranian people in their revolt against the mullahs, and ensuring Israel has both the military means and the political support and flexibility to take what it deems to be appropriate measures to defend itself against the Iranian regime and its regional proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Don't worry, we've linked our military with Israel so closely that we won't know where one ends and the other begins. Problem solved, or whatever. Second, the next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should build on the Trump administration Part 1's diplomatic successes by encouraging other Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, to enter the Abraham Accords. Or related policies should include reversing as appropriate the Biden administration's degradation of the long-standing partnership with Saudi Arabia. The Palestinian Authority should be defunded. A further key priority is keeping Turkey, they're saying it correctly, Turkey, in the Western fold and a NATO ally. This includes a vigorous outreach to Turkey to dissuade it from hedging toward Russia or China, which is likely to require a rethinking of U.S. support for YPG-PKK, People's Protective Units, Kurdistan Workers' Party, Kurdish forces, which Ankara believes are an existential threat to its security. For the foreseeable future and much longer than one new administration, Middle Eastern oil will play a key role in the world economy. Therefore, the U.S. must continue to support its allies and compete with its economic adversaries, including China. Relations with Saudi Arabia should be strengthened in a way that seriously curtails Chinese influence in Riyadh. Really quick, I'm going to go into our notes here in the whiteboard, and I'm going to add, pardon, just going to add right down here, let's say, notes, and I'm going to say a big to-do is made about essentially securing the petrodollar. Okay, just leave that as is, all right? Moving on here. Third, it is in the U.S. national interest to build a Middle East security pact that includes Israel, Egypt, the Gulf states, and potentially India. As a second Quad arrangement, protecting freedom of navigation in the Gulf and in the Red Sea. Good job with that one now, Trump. You're doing a great job with that. Awesome. Good job. In the Gulf and in the Red Sea, Suez Canal is vital to the world economy and therefore to U.S. prosperity as well. In North Africa, security cooperation with European allies, especially France, will be vital to limit growing Islamist threats and the incursion of Russian influence through positionings of the Wagner Group. Now, the Wagner Group was actually a threat back then, and to some extent it kind of still is, remnants of it at least. The U.S. cannot neglect a concern for human rights and minority rights, which, pardon me, ooh, you said minority, bad boy. And minority rights, which must be balanced with strategic and security considerations. Special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially the status of Middle Eastern Christians. There's minorities, got it. And other religious minorities, as well as the human trafficking endemic to the region. There, we took it back to a racist place. Good. I was worried for a minute there that we were going to actually get woke. Oof. Boy, howdy, that would have been bad. Sub-Saharan Africa. Africa's importance to U.S. foreign policy and strategic interests is rising and will only continue to grow. Its explosive population growth, large reserves of industry-dependent minerals, proximity to key maritime shipping routes, and its collective diplomatic power ensure the continent's global importance. Yet, as Africa's strategic significance has grown, the U.S.'s relative influence there has declined. Terrorist activity on the continent has increased, while America's competitors are making significant gains for their own national interests. The PRC's companies dominate the African supply chain for certain minerals critical to emerging technologies. African nations comprise major country bloc elements that shield the PRC and Russia from international isolation for their human rights abuses, and African nations staunchly support PRC foreign policy goals on issues such as Hong Kong occupation, South China Seas dispute, arbitration, and Taiwan. The new administration can correct this strategic failing of existing policy by prioritizing Africa and by undertaking fundamental changes in how the United States works with African nations. At a bare minimum, the next administration should shift focus, strategic focus that is, from assistance to growth, reorient the focus of U.S. overseas development assistance away from standalone humanitarian development aid and toward fostering free market systems, oh goody, capitalism, in African countries by incentivizing and facilitating U.S. private sector engagement in these countries. Development aid alone does little to develop countries and can fuel corruption and violent conflict, whereas capitalism could never. While the United States should always be willing to offer emergency and humanitarian relief, both U.S. and African long-term interests are better served by a free market-based, private growth focused strategy to Africa's economic challenges. Counter malign Chinese activity on the continent. This should include the development of powerful public diplomacy efforts to counter Chinese influence campaigns with commitments to freedom of speech and the free flow of information. The creation of a template digital hygiene program that African countries can access to sanitize and protect their sensitive communications networks from espionage by the PRC and other hostile actors. The recognition of Somaliland statehood as a hedge against the U.S.'s deteriorating position in Djibouti, and a focus on supporting American companies involved in industries important to U.S. national interests or that have a competitive advantage in Africa. Counter the furtherance of terrorism. African country-based terrorist groups like Boko Haram may currently lack the capability to attack the United States, but at least some of them would eventually try, if allowed, to consolidate their operations and plan such attacks. The immediate threat they pose lies in their abilities and willingness to strike American targets in their regions of operation or to harm U.S. interests in other ways. The U.S. should support capable African military and security operations to the State Department and other federal agencies responsible for granting foreign military education, training, and security assistance. Yeah, I've never done that before. What could possibly go wrong? Build a coalition of the cooperative rather than thinning limited to federal resources by spreading funds across all countries, including some that are unsupportive or even hostile to the United States. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should focus on those countries with which the United States can expect a mutually beneficial relationship. After being designated focus countries by the State Department, such nations should receive a full suite of American engagement. That said, the next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should still maintain a baseline level of contact, even with those countries with which it has less than fruitful relationships, in order to encourage positive developments and to be in a position to seize unexpected diplomatic opportunities as they arise. Focus on core diplomatic activities and stop promoting policies approach to the American culture wars. Okay. African nations are particularly unreasonably non-receptive to the U.S. social policies such as abortion and pro-LGBTQ initiatives being imposed on them. The United States should focus on core security, economic and human rights, just not those human rights, engagement with African partners, and reject the promotion of divisive policies that hurt the deepening of shared goals between the U.S. and its African partners. Europe, American foreign policy has long benefited from cooperation with the countries of Europe, generally the EU, and any conservative administration should build on this resource, yet the transatlantic relationship is complex with security, trade, and political dimensions. First, the Europe, Eurasia, and Russia regions made up of relatively wealthy and technologically advanced societies that should be expected to bear a fair share of both security needs and global security architecture. The United States cannot be expected to provide a defense umbrella for countries unwilling to contribute appropriately. Hello, Switzerland? Anybody? The Netherlands? Fucking Austria? Hi. At stake, Denmark? Iceland? Anybody? Come on. That's a stupid fucking thing to say. At stake, after 2024, we'll be examining the status of the Wales Pledge of 2% of gross domestic product toward defense by NATO members. The new administration will also want to encourage nations to, Germany too, I forgot Germany, will also want to encourage nations to exceed that pledge. Second, transatlantic trade is a significant part of the global economy, and it is and the United States' national interest to amplify it, especially because this means winning Europe of its dependence on China. However, there are also transatlantic trade tensions that disturb the US-EU relationship and that have been evident across administrations. The US must undertake a comprehensive review of trade arrangements between the EU and the United States to assure the US businesses are treated fairly and to build productive reciprocity. Outside the EU, trade with the post-Brexit UK needs urgent development before London slips back into the orbit of the EU. Third, in the wake of Brexit, foreign policy now takes place without UK input, which disadvantages the United States, given that the UK has historically been aligned with many US positions. Therefore, US diplomacy must be more attentive to inner EU developments while also developing new allies inside the EU, especially the Central European countries on the eastern flank of the EU, which are most vulnerable to Russian aggression. South and Central Asia. Many key American interests and responsibilities are found in South and Central Asia, specifically continuing to advance the bilateral relationship with India to mutual benefit is a crucial objective for U.S. policy. India plays a crucial role in the countering of the Chinese threat and securing a free and open Indo-Pacific. It is a critical security guarantor for the key routes of air and sea travel linking East and West, and an important emerging U.S. economic partner. For instance, the 2019 Department of Indo-Pacific Strategy report noted that the Indian Ocean era is at the nexus of global trade and commerce, with nearly half of the world's 90,000 commercial vessels and 2/3 of global oil trade traveling through its sea lanes. The region boasts some of the fastest growing economies on Earth. Meanwhile, the threat of transnational terrorism remains acute. The humiliating withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan after a 20-year military campaign has created new challenges. It has provided an opportunity to reset the deeply troubled U.S.-Pakistan relationship and reassess U.S. counterterrorism strategy in the region. The long-standing India-Pakistan rivalry and tensions regarding the disputed territory of Kashmir continue to pose risks to regional stability, especially because both countries are nuclear powers. The State Department's role in strengthening the regional security and economic framework linking the U.S. and India is crucial. In addition, the department has important functional responsibilities in dealing with a range of threats from nuclear proliferation, if I could talk, to transnational proliferation. While American statecraft should also seek to improve bilateral relations throughout the region, U.S. policy must be clear-eyed and realistic about the perfidiousness of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan and the military political rule in Pakistan. There can be no expectation of normal relations with either. The priority for statecraft is advancing the U.S.-Indian role as a cornerstone of the Quad, a cooperative framework including the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia. The Quad is comprised of the key nations in coordinating efforts for a free and open Indo-Pacific. It is an overarching group that nests the key U.S. bilateral and trilateral cooperative efforts that facilitate U.S. collaborative efforts across the Indo-Pacific. The State Department should also encourage the Quad Plus concept that allows other regional powers to participate in Quad coordination on issues of mutual interest. Further, the State Department must support an integrated, my eyes are bothering me, federal effort to deliver a revamped regional strategy for South Asia, as well as leading the execution of key tasks to implement the strategy. The Arctic. Because of Alaska, the U.S. is an Arctic nation. The Arctic is a vast expanse of land and sea rich in resources, including fish, minerals, and energy. For example, the region is estimated to contain 90 million barrels of oil and 1/4 of the world's undiscovered natural gas reserves. The Arctic is lightly populated, only 4 million. God damn it, the poor native people there. Only 4 million people in the world live above the Arctic Circle, with more than half of those living in Russia. Only around 68,000 people in Alaska live above the Arctic Circle. However, the sheer immensity of the Alaskan Arctic means its population density is less than 1 person per square mile. The United States has several strong interests in the Arctic region. The rate of melting ice during summer months has led to increased interest not only from shipping and tourism sectors, but also from America's global competitors who are interested in exploiting the region's strategic importance rather in accessing its bounty of natural resources. In the not too distant future, there will be a growing interest in the Arctic from both state and non-state actors alike. China has been open about its interest in the region primarily as a highway for trade, but also for its rich natural resources. I was going to look for another water here. Hold on. Wait a minute. While the PRC's increasing intervention. Fuck. Yes. Shit. Situation. Sure it's coming up. It's great. Everything's awesome. So, alright. Okay. China has been open about its interest in the region primarily as a highway for trade, but also for its rich natural resources, while the PRC's increasing intervention in Arctic affairs is a bit strained because it does not have an Arctic coastline. Russia does, and Russia has made no secret of its view that the Arctic is vital for economic and military reasons. Russia has invested heavily in new and refurbished Arctic bases and cold weather equipment and capabilities. The North Star of U.S. Arctic policy should remain national sovereignty safeguarded through robust capabilities as well as through diplomatic, economic, and legal attentiveness. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should embrace the view that NATO must acknowledge that it is, in part, an Arctic alliance. With the likely accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO, every Arctic nation except for Russia will be a NATO member state. NATO has been slow to appreciate that the Arctic is a theater that it must defend, especially considering Russia's brazen aggression against Ukraine. NATO must develop and implement an Arctic strategy that recognizes the importance of the region and ensures that Russian use of Arctic waters and resources does not exceed a reasonable footprint. The U.S. should unapologetically pursue American interests in the Arctic by promoting economic freedom in the region. Economic freedom spurs prosperity, innovation, respect for the rule of law, jobs, and sustainability. Most important, economic freedom can help to keep the Arctic stable and secure. The U.S. should work to ensure that shipping lanes in the Arctic remain available to all global commercial traffic and free of onerous fees and burdensome administrative, regulatory, and military requirements. While this should be the next administration's policy with respect to all countries that might seek to block free-flowing commercial traffic, the next administration will clearly have to exert substantial attention toward Russia. Both the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy are vital tools to ensure an unmonopolized Arctic. It is imperative, except by us, right? It is imperative that the Navy and Coast Guard continue to expand their fleets, including planned icebreaker acquisitions to assure Arctic access for the United States and other friendly actors. The remote and harsh conditions of the Arctic also make unmanned system investment and use particularly appealing for providing additional situational awareness, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The Coast Guard, I see now why they want the Coast Guard up there, should also consider upgrading facilities such as its Barrow Station to reinforce its Arctic capabilities and demonstrate a greater commitment to the region. The People's Republic of China has declared itself a near-Arctic state, which is an imaginary term non-existent in international discourse. The United States should work with like-minded Arctic nations, including Russia, to raise legitimate concerns about the PRC's so-called polar Silk Road ambitions. Ugh. Yeah, stop fighting the war on drugs. Doggone it. That would fucking solve the situation entirely. Moving on. Concerning Greenland, they say the opening of a U.S. consulate in Nuuk is welcome. Is it? It isn't, but okay. A formal year-round diplomatic presence is an effective way for the U.S. to better understand local political and economic dynamics. Furthermore, given Greenland's geographic proximity, and its rising potential as a commercial and tourist location, the next administration should, i.e. Trump right now, pursue policies that enhance economic ties between the U.S. and Greenland. International organizations defending and protecting the American people and advancing their interests requires the United States to engage in a broad spectrum of bilateral and multilateral relationships, including participating in international organizations, working with other governments through international organizations like the United Nations, UN can be tremendously useful, but membership in these organizations must always be understood as a means to attain defined goals rather than an end in itself. Engagement with international organizations is one relatively easy way for the U.S. to defend its interests and to seek to address problems in concert with other nations. But it is not the only option, and American diplomats should be clear-eyed about international organizations' strengths and weaknesses. Who's to say they're not? When such institutions act against U.S. interests, the United States must be prepared to take appropriate steps in response, up to and including withdrawal. The manifest failure and corruption of the World Health Organization, really, during the COVID-19 pandemic is an example of the danger that international organizations pose to U.S. citizens and interests. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, must end blind support for international organizations. If an international organization is effective and advances American interests, the United States should support it. If an international organization is ineffective or does not support American interests, the United States should not support it. Those that are effective will still require constant pressure from U.S. officials to ensure that they remain effective. Serious consideration should also be given to withdrawal from organizations that no longer have value, quietly undermine U.S. interests or goals, or disproportionately rely on U.S. financial contributions to survive. Okay, that last part sounds a little goofy. The Trump administration's tough love approach, obviously when they're talking about the Trump administration, again, just a reminder, they're talking about the first Trump administration. So the Trump administration, one's tough love approach to international organizations served American interests. For example, the Trump administration withdrew from or terminated funding for the United Nations Human Rights Council, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and the WHO. And don't worry, now we've gotten rid of USAID. The results were redeployment of taxpayer dollars to better uses and other organizations, quote-unquote, getting the message that the United States will not allow itself and its money to be used to undermine its own interests. The Biden administration reversed many of these decisions. Currently, U.S. funding for international organizations is more than $16 billion in fiscal year 2021, a sharp increase from $10.8 billion in fiscal year 2015. Millions of American taxpayer dollars go to support policies and initiatives that hurt the United States and American citizens. The next administration should, again, Trump, number 2, should direct the Secretary of State to initiate a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis of U.S. participation in all international organizations. This review should take into account long-standing provisions of federal law to prohibit the use of taxpayer dollars to promote abortion, population control, and terrorist activities. Okay. As well as other applicable restrictions on funding for international organizations and agencies with a view to withholding U.S. funds in case of abuses. International organizations should not be used to promote radical social policies as if they were human rights priorities. Ew, what the fuck? Doing so undermines actual human rights and weakens U.S. credibility abroad. So, don't stand up for gay people or black people or disabled people or anything like that. Got it. The next administration should use its voice, influence votes, again, being Trump number 2, that's the next administration, should use its voice, influence votes, and funding in international organizations to promote authentic human rights as opposed to the inauthentic kind, I guess, and respect for sovereignty based on the binding international obligations contained in treaties that have been constitutionally ratified by the U.S. government. It must promote a strict text-based interpretation of treaty obligations that does not consider human rights treaties as living instruments, quote-unquote, both within the State Department and within international organizations that receive U.S. funding, including by making respect for sovereignty and authentic human rights a litmus test of personnel decisions and elections processes within international organizations. The U.S. Commission on Unalienable Human Rights focused on the primacy of civil and political rights in its inaugural report, which remains an important guidepost for bilateral and multilateral engagements on human rights. The Commission's report is a roadmap for revamping and re-energizing U.S. human rights policy and should be the base for both structural and policy changes both structural and policy changes throughout the State Department. All U.S. multilateral engagements must be reevaluated in light of the work of the Commission, and initiatives that promote controversial policies must be halted and rolled back. It is paramount to create a healthy culture of respect for life, the family, sovereignty, and authentic human rights in international organizations and agencies. To support this goal, the U.S. led an effort during the Trump administration, part one, to forge a consensus among like-minded countries in support of human life, women's health, support of the family as the basic unit of human society, and defense of national sovereignty. The result was the Geneva Consensus Declaration on Women's Health and Protection of the Family. All U.S. foreign policy engagements that were produced and expanded under the Obama and Biden administrations must be aligned with the Geneva Consensus Declaration and the work of the U.S. Commission on Unalienable Human Rights. The U.S. government should not and cannot promote or fund abortion in international programs or multilateral organizations. Technically, the United States can prevent its international funding from going toward abortions, but the U.S. will have a greater impact by including like-minded nations and building on the coalition launched through the Geneva Consensus Declaration with a view to shaping the work of international agencies by functioning as a united front. The COVID-19 pandemic made it painfully clear that both international organizations and some countries are only too willing to trample human rights in the name of public health. For example, the WHO was and remains willing to support the suppression of basic human rights partially, rather because of its close relationship with human rights abusers like the PRC. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should unequivocally embrace the premise that humanity and the international community can simultaneously tackle pandemics and other emergent health threats without impeding the rights of people. It must, time out. Rights and freedoms, not the same thing. Not the same thing, okay? I repeat, rights and freedoms are not the same thing. It must also become a vocal surrogate for people in countries where rights are being suppressed in the name of health. This will likely require greater restrictions on the supply of federal dollars to the WHO and other health-focused international organizations. Pending adjustment of their policies, the United States must return to treating international organizations as vehicles for promoting American interests, or take steps to extract itself from those organizations. Shaping the future development of a grand foreign policy strategy is key to the next administration, i.e. Trump right now's success, but without addressing structural and related issues with the State Department, this strategy will be at risk. The Hart-Rudman Commission called for a significant restructuring of the State Department specifically and foreign assistance programs generally, stating that funding increases could only be justified if there was a greater confidence, rather that institutions would use their funding effectively. Sadly, the exact opposite has occurred. The State Department has metastasized in structure and resources, but neither the function of the department nor the use of taxpayer dollars has improved. The next administration can take steps to remedy these deficiencies. The State Department's greatest problem is certainly not an absence of resources. As noted, the department boasts tens of thousands of employees and billions of dollars of funding, including significant amounts of discretionary funding. It also exists among a broader array of federal agencies that are duplicative, particularly when it comes to the provision of direct and indirect foreign assistance. Realistically, meaningful reform of the State Department will require significant streamlining. Below are some key structural and operational recommendations that will be essential for the next administration, i.e. Trump right now's success, and which will lay crucial foundations for other necessary reforms. Number one, develop a reorganization strategy. Despite periodic attempts by previous administrations, including the Trump administration, part one, that is, to make more than cosmetic changes to the State Department, its structure has remained largely unchanged since the 20th century. The State Department will better serve future administrations regardless of party if it were to be meaningfully streamlined. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should develop a completely hypothetical reorganization of the department. One which would tighten accountability to political leadership, reduce overhead, eliminate redundancy, waste fewer taxpayers' resources, and recommend additional personnel-related changes for improvement of function. such, reorganization could be creative but also carefully review specific structure-related problems that have been documented over the years. This reorganization effort would necessarily assess what office closures can be carried out with and without congressional approval. Timelines for action in these fronts should be developed accordingly, but speed should be a priority. Consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Foreign assistance is a critical foreign policy tool that is too often disconnected from the federal government's practice of foreign policy. Bureaucrats spend significant energy resisting the use of non-emergency foreign assistance to leverage positive results for the United States, even though it is a perfectly reasonable proposition. The coordination of foreign assistance dollars is also difficult because of the foreign assistance budget, and foreign loan issuance. Authorities are divided across numerous cabinet departments, smaller agencies, and other offices. The next administration, i.e. Trump right now, should take steps to ensure that future foreign assistance clearly and unambiguously supports the president's foreign policy agenda. For example, the next administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is technically subordinate to the State Department, should be authorized to take on the additional role of Director of Foreign Assistance with the rank of Deputy Secretary and oversee all foreign assistance. This role, which existed briefly during the George W. Bush administration before it was eliminated by the Obama administration, would empower the dual-headed official to better align and coordinate with the manifold foreign assistance programs across the federal government. The next administration should also evaluate whether these multiple sources of foreign assistance are in the national interest, and if not, develop a plan to consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Make public diplomacy and international broadcasting serve American interests. A key part of U.S. foreign policy is the ability to communicate with not only governments but with peoples of the world. Indeed, in some ways, communicating directly with the public is more important than communicating with governments, particularly in times of governmental conflict or disagreement. Public diplomacy has historically been and remains vital to American foreign policy success. Unfortunately, U.S. policy diplomacy, which largely relies on taxpayer-funded international broadcasting outlets, has been deeply ineffective in recent years. The U.S. government's first foray into international broadcasting started with the Voice of America radio broadcast in 1942, which was intended as a tool to communicate directly with the people of Europe during World War II. During the next half-century, America's international broadcasting efforts both expanded and increased in sophistication as the United States shifted out of its quote-unquote hot war in Europe and into the Cold War with the Soviet Union. U.S. international broadcasting prowess and the confident willingness to communicate the correctness of American ideals in the face of global resistance arguably hit its peak near the conclusion of the Cold War in the late 1980s. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the subsequent collapse of Soviet and Eastern Bloc communism, factors including the false appeal of a so-called peace dividend triggered a slide in the U.S. ability to communicate a pro-freedom message to the rest of the world and its commitment to do so. Ironically, this slide accompanied the rise of the internet and mobile phone technologies, which arguably facilitated the most significant revolution in human communication since the invention of the printing press. The United States must reassert its public diplomacy obligations by restoring its international broadcasting infrastructure as part of the broader U.S. foreign policy framework, consolidating broadcasting resources and committing to people-focused and pro-freedom messaging and content, engage in cyber diplomacy. Cyberspace has become an arena for competition between the U.S. and nations that seek and export digital authoritarianism. Cyberspace protection is critical to national security and deserving of commensurate diplomatic resources. Defined as the use of diplomatic tools to address issues arising in and through cyberspace, cyber diplomacy is a key part of the United States government's toolkit for preventing and addressing cyber threats. The model for cyberspace that the U.S. espouses is based on democracy and freedom of information. It is an open, interoperable, secure, reliable, market-driven domain that reflects democratic values and protects privacy. Russia and China, meanwhile, are authoritarian regimes that use the internet to limit public opposition and control information. They have created technological tools to enforce dominance over their peoples, rather. And at the UN and international organizations dealing with cyberspace, they strive to push standards that assist their totalitarian efforts and undermine Western nations. Simultaneously, Russia, China, and lesser adversaries exploit the more open networks of countries like the US to undermine democracy through disinformation and propaganda. Oh, really? Now we're admitting that that's the thing. I see. Can't keep up with all the heel and face turns in this document. They have attempted to influence U.S. elections, enabled or encouraged actors to exploit cyber vulnerabilities to commit theft or real or intellectual property. They have challenged U.S. governmental, military, and critical infrastructure networks with targeted malware. In short, the cyberspace era has gradually evolved from one of exploration, innovation, and cooperation to one that retains these features but is also marked by aggressive competition and persistent threats. To meet this reality, the State Department must move beyond its traditional model of attempting to establish non-binding informal world standards of acceptable cyberspace behavior. The State Department should work with allies to establish a clear framework of enforceable norms for actions in cyberspace, moving beyond the voluntary norms of the United Nations group of governmental experts. The State Department should also assist the should assist the Department of Defense to go on offense against adversaries. The turns as a strategic approach has not stemmed the onslaught of cyber aggression below the level of armed conflict. The traditional U.S. defensive approach, based on deterrence followed by reaction to crossed quote-unquote red lines, is no longer effective. Adversaries rather can evade this strategy through multiple tactical lines of action below the level of armed conflict, and such actions have a cumulative strategic effect. The State Department's role should be to work with allies and engage with adversaries when necessary to draw clear lines of unacceptable conduct. Global financial infrastructure, nuclear controls, and public health are particularly important areas in which consensus may even be found across ideological lines. These mission-essential institutional initiatives should be joined with others to establish a presidentially directed and durable U.S. foreign policy. Conclusion. The next conservative president, i.e. Trump right now, has the opportunity and the duty to restructure the creation and execution of U.S. foreign policy so that it is focused on his or her vision for the nation's role in the world. The policy ideas and reform recommendations outlined in this chapter provide guidance about how the State Department can contribute to this objective. In the main, this chapter focuses attention away from the special interests and social experiments that are used in some quarters to capture U.S. foreign policy. The ideas and recommendations herein are premised on the belief that a rigorous adherence to the national interest is the most enduring foundation for U.S. grand strategy in the 21st century. And I figure we'll stop here for tonight. I'll try to power through some of this tomorrow and kind of keep going until we've finished this up. We've made really good progress, and ask any questions you might have. Join our Discord, link in description, link in chat, etc. Like I said, contribute to notes if you are so moved, and let's talk this out. Let's learn about this, and let's make sure that we don't forget that this is the playbook they're operating out of. That everything we've talked about is happening, or has happened, or will happen. So be safe out there, guys, and